You say when.
Thank you.
This is my good side anyway, so.
We get a vote on that?
Notice I didn't call for one?
Hey, good catch.
We are ready to go, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. My name is Jim Saban, and I am the chairman of the Drive-In Site Utilization Committee. I'll begin by taking a roll call for quorum. David Reed,
Present.
Jack McCormick,
Yeah,
Bud Nugent. Bud Nugent.
I
Not
don't see
present.
him.
Rich Bilski. Rich Bilski. I do not hear from him either. Tom Roach.
Here.
Susan Britta.
Susan's muted still.
There
Susan,
she
are you
is.
with us?
Jim,
There-
can you hear me now, Jim?
I can.
Okay.
So we are missing Bud and Rich. Is that correct, Kathy?
Yes, I do not see them. They're not present and they're not listed, shown as an attendee. If they are, please raise your hand, but I don't see them.
Okay, and so we do have a quorum though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, we do. Okay. With a quorum present, I will now call the meeting to order. I will ask the moderator to explain how the remote participation will work before we proceed. Our moderator today is Kathy Williams, and I can get that right because it says right underneath your name, Kathy.
Thank you, Jim. As a precautionary measure to reduce the spread of the coronavirus, all town buildings are temporarily closed to the public for large-scale meetings, and the November 3rd, 2020 Drive-In Site Utilization Committee meeting will be held by remote participation. My name is Kathy Williams, and I'm the Town of Yarmouth Town Planner. I'll be serving as your moderator for this meeting. Although no in-person attendance will be permitted, every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access and participate in the proceedings. People who would like to view or listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by watching via this virtual meeting or dialing into the number provided on the notice of meeting. We will also are live streaming right now to the Town of Yarmouth YouTube channel, and it will also be available for future viewing at a later date. For all meetings, to reduce confusion during the meeting, all audience participants enter the meeting muted. Participants will be unmuted when called upon to speak by the chair or the moderator. All votes must be roll call votes. If you're not speaking, please mute yourself to avoid unnecessary background noise. Do not use speakerphone or Bluetooth devices when speaking. For public participation, although the DISEX meeting is not a public hearing requiring a public comment period, at the discretion of the chair, comments or questions from the public may be taken. Members of the public may speak by selecting the raise hand button and waiting to be called upon by the chair. If you are dialing in on the phone number provided, you can press *9 on your phone to indicate that you would like to comment. I will now hand the meeting back over to the chairman.
Thank you, Kathy. So when we look at our agenda, the first item says discussion of proposal by IAE to extend the license and to use of drive-in site for 2021. So I've been thinking about this since we put this together. I'd like to kind of swap that around a little bit as to how we look at this. I think it's important. First of all, it's been a long summer. We've been all dealing with COVID and trying to do the best we can with what we've got. And I think we've learned a lot from the summer. And I think that what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the use of the drive-in site, how it went, things that we need to do to make it better, and then talk a little bit about the proposal by IAE. So I'm kind of like flipping that around a little bit, of let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons, and then we can talk about any proposals that come forward. But I think it's important to look at where we are today and where we've come from. I think we all know that we've got some things that that we've learned. Some of the key issues that I think that we need to discuss and have been evident is the issue of noise. We have a question of frequency of use, the types of uses that we want to go forward, how we move forward and still be able to move forward with the development of the site, versus continuing to use it for other events. how that affects us and our ability to move forward. So those are some of the things I think we need to talk about. I think all of us have got a packet that's been rather extensive, and Kathy, congratulations on being able to actually walk, talk, and chew bubble gum at this time, considering all the documents that I've got from you the last couple of days. It tells me you've been very busy. So we've got a lot of input, both pro and con. Has everybody got a copy of all of that information?
Yes.
Okay, so everybody's had a chance to look at and read the comments with regards to this last summer. And I think those are important learning tools. Our job is to bring some recommendations back to the Board of Selectmen, who are ultimately the decision makers and the policy setters in this town and the enforcers of bylaws and all those good things. We are an advisory group, if you will, to bring back to them after our consideration for the issues, what we think is best for the community moving forward. I'll open to some comment from members of the committee. Start with David. I was just going to follow my list. Dave, if you have anything to comment on, or
Yeah, I think based upon the recent experience this summer and early fall, the concerns of the neighbors is probably our first priority. The one thing we have to reconcile for any future uses, not only by this applicant, but anybody else. Clearly, I know I got phone messages and or emails almost every week from midsummer on about the concerts and the noise that it was generating in the neighborhood. In general, I think Mr. Epstein put on a good production. He knows what he's doing, and I think he did as good as he could under the circumstances. But that doesn't mean we're stuck with that. We certainly consider changes going forward. I think in general, the single user dominating the site was not what we had in mind, but under the circumstances, again, probably was the best we could do for last summer, and maybe appropriate for next summer, considering the fact that we really haven't developed the infrastructure or the history of use of the site yet. Maybe it's still appropriate to recommend that to the selectmen. That'll be ultimately their decision. But in terms of the request of Mr. Epstein going forward, I do note that he indicates that he paid approximately $40,000 to the town for his use. My understanding on short-term rentals like this is that the selectmen can target that money within the fiscal year to go directly back to the site and not go into the general funds. Since there's requests and we've discussed various infrastructure proposals and needs for the site, one of our priorities probably should be to request the selectmen segregate that money and turn it right back into the site for site improvements, perhaps the electrical service that was most immediately requested, or some cleaning up of the grounds. I guess that's about it for my comments on the uses to date and where we are today.
okay, thank you, David. Jack, do you have any comments to make?
Look, to be honest with you, Jim, I think that David put it pretty clearly where we stand as far as what's been going on and what the facts are on the ground at the time. I'd have to say that I absolutely agree with the funds generated should probably go back into the site, and especially infrastructure like electricity. I think that's something we want at that site, regardless of who uses it. But all in all, I'd have to agree with the way David stated it.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Susan, do you have any input to make at this time?
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of observations. I did drive through the neighborhood last Sunday morning. I spent some time driving up and down the streets. Not only the streets off South Sea, but of course the roads off Route 28. It's a lovely neighborhood. I mean, it's very leafy. It's a lovely neighborhood, and I can certainly sympathize with their annoyance. That's one observation. The second is, I think short term, it was not a bad idea to try this. We had a site, we had an entrepreneur that was eager to do something. We learned a lot of lessons that we can now incorporate into, future use of the site. And then the third observation is, you all know we're in the beginning phases of this of our visioning program, that Kathy's wearing a second hat on that also. And what we do and how we think about this site and long-term use, I think is a terrific opportunity to collapse that into the visioning statement, and our visioning of the town and what we want to use this site for long-term. I heard your early conversation about baseball. I was told by someone that there's a possibility that the baseball league might have some idea about putting some sort of facility in there that could promote baseball on the Cape and maybe add to Yarmouth's character as sort of the family entertainment center on the Cape. But I do think I think it's a great opportunity. I feel I'm very sympathetic toward the neighbors. We have a commercial activity going on in a residential neighborhood, and they're paying a big price for it. At the same time, we as a community have a great opportunity to take a look at that site again, and see if we are doing the right thing by it. So those are just my observations at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Susan. I'm going to make a couple of comments before, Tom, I give you a chance to jump in. Just to help bring Susan up to date. If everybody doesn't know, Susan is our newest member and comes in as a representative of the planning board. So has probably not had the opportunity to get caught up with some of the things that we're at. Susan, where we are right now is we've gone through the process of looking at this site. Originally, our original charge was, what do you do with this piece of land?
Right.
And so through that, we've come up with our process of creating the riverfront park and the boardwalk
Right.
out into the marsh. And I think if we look at what we've already accomplished and how we can tie that into the visioning, I think would be very beneficial. But I think we're pretty much, boat has already sailed as far as how we want to move forward in the development. There was even discussion from the selectmen to go back and look at a marina, but we as a committee have come to the conclusion that it's best to move forward with the plans that we have in position now.
Uh-huh.
The other comment I want to make is you made a comment about a commercial development in a residential area. And I just want to let you know and to let everybody know that the drive-in site is not within a residential neighborhood. It's zoned, I think, B2. Kathy, if you can correct me on that, but I think it's part of the B2 zoning district. Some sections of it might be because of the depth of it, but I think for the most part, it's a commercial property. So I just wanted to kind of get you up to speed on some of that, Susan, as far as
Thank
where
you.
we're at with this whole process. And I see Bud has joined us as well. So Jack, I'm going to go to you next. Bud, we're talking a little bit about where we're at and where we're moving forward. Tom, you still there?
Yes. Well, just echoing some of the comments that have already been made. There's a common thread that runs through this whole situation and that's noise pollution. And if you look at all the letters, which we have seen many in emails, what have you, I think that it behooves us to really think hard on what these people can expect to endure, so to speak, for next year. Now, I know the selectmen, I guess they're not going to meet on the 10th. They're going to be meeting, I think, a week or so after that. So I'm not quite clear. Has the ship sailed for us to make recommendations for next year? Is it a given that they will be back for next year and we're looking to make improvements to the lease? That's a gray area as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. Is the short
Okay.
answer.
Okay. So maybe, Mr. Chairman, you could probably outline what you would hope to achieve from this meeting relative to our comments going forward to the selectmen.
I'm sure we can get to that. I'm just giving everybody a chance to weigh in to get started with, and then we can go through some of
Oh,
those.
absolutely.
And Bud, you're just getting here, so we've talked a little bit about our observations over the course of the summer and how we move forward, and just wonder if you have any comments to add.
Sure. I was only 3 minutes late, but
Hey, you're here now. That's what counts.
I'm here now. That's what counts. Yeah, there's several issues, obviously, that we're looking at. I am certainly sympathetic to the neighbors and their concerns, which they have raised for several years now, and it just takes different turns just in terms of what their concerns are. I would be more concerned about that if Adam hadn't been so cooperative and actually forward thinking and proactive about addressing some of these issues. And I really, respected that. Obviously, he wants a renewal and so on. So I understand there's a pragmatic view of that sort of thing. But I think to address the noise mediation as best as everybody can would be the right approach. Again, I am sympathetic. However, from a 40,000 point view, I have never been one that believes that 5 or 10% of the people involved should be making decisions for the majority. And of the various comments I've read and the information from the chamber and this and that and the other, this was an overwhelming success and is even supported by some of the neighbors. And I think that's a very positive thing. So I think we should look at this as how can we and Adam do the best job possible to accommodate the concerns of the neighbors, but not look at this in terms of, gee, this isn't working, we should do something different. In terms of the infrastructure, I think certainly some of the basics like electricity and stuff we should move forward on. From a cost point of view, one of the things that we looked at a year or two ago was the idea of building a semi-permanent stage and that sort of thing. If we have a recurring vendor like Adam, who has shouldered all the expense for that sort of thing, I would ride that horse as long as it makes sense to do so. I know in the case of the chamber and the Halloween event, he made available his staff and everything else for a fairly small fee for them to use and do the videos of the kids and all that kind of stuff. That seemed to me a real win-win situation in terms of his working with the town and us not having to reinvent the wheel in terms of some of the potential infrastructure. In terms of additional types of venues, certainly concerts like the Country Fest and so on, I would love to have in there. Again, I'm thinking that since if he was there and already had all that infrastructure, that they could just work out an agreement in terms of, renting his equipment, if you will, for use, during that sort of thing. Again, kind of saving us the concerns and budgeting and everything else for building all that all over again. And I think we should continue to explore requests or interest from other businesses and parties and so on that would want to use the space and be thinking of it in terms of what areas there would make sense to be multi-use and not to the exclusive use of the drive-in for the movies and concerts. So, hopefully we could come up with some sort of cooperative / sharing / other people have a chance to use it and, generate some revenues for the town directly and indirectly. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Bud. Just a couple of comments on some of the things. I don't think there's any doubt that overall, this has been a successful, if you look at the big picture of things, the economic impact that it's had in the community by bringing people, we've got in our packet, a survey that was done, and where people are coming from off the Cape, it's achieving the types of things we had talked about in the beginning of bringing people to our community and spending time in our restaurants and our hotels and in our community. So to that point, our business community has benefited greatly, considering what's going on with COVID and the restrictions that restaurants have had. It's been a real win for the community. I understand and hear the complaints of the neighborhood, and I think the history of this committee suggests that we have listened to the neighbors. We all recall when we started this and going over to Gateway Isles, which was the neighborhood to the east versus the issues they have now, which are the neighborhood to the west. But while we were having concerns from the neighbors to the east, this committee did go over there, hear the community, hear their concerns, and shared those concerns with the selectmen. And it's my intention to do the same thing with the community to the west. We hear their concerns. So moving forward, we need to address some of those concerns in a way that the community still benefits, but not to a complete detriment to the neighbors.
Yeah.
There's got to be a win-win there somehow. Tom, was that you that trying to say something? Tom?
No, I was just agreeing with you.
So,
Mr. Chairman, it's Susan. Could I just add one clarification on something that Tom asked? Is
Sure.
it definite that they're coming back? Is that what you said? They're definitely coming back and we just need to do some modification to the lease? Or are we actually going to discuss whether they come back or not? What, I didn't understand the answer.
So we need to discuss, he's interested in coming back, and then needs to
Okay.
be a process that takes place to go forward. He's presented a proposal, and
Okay.
I'm going to have Kathy walk us through some of that that we're going to talk about here in a minute. But I want to just talk about, what we've seen and concerned as far as things like traffic seems to be something they've got under control. The biggest issues to me are the frequency of events. How often are they going to have them? What are the timeframes? Are they going to be playing music until 11 o'clock, or are we going to suggest that it's a different time frame, hours of operation? Clearly, the issue of amplification has been one of the bigger issues. And, I think that part of the problem that the neighborhood is experiencing was people in their cars turning on their car stereos, and that became the amplification, not necessarily, although I'm not a sound expert, but certainly I would think that, I've been sitting on a stop sign and heard the music from a car next to me. So it might have been some of that. So it doesn't really matter where. The fact of the matter is there's a perception in that neighborhood that there's a noise pollution issue, and that perception is their reality. So we need to find a way to mitigate some of that and to find a common ground with that neighborhood as far as if we're going to move forward in this type of use of the facility. And frankly, that's part of the discussion this committee has to have is this the type of stuff we want to continue to try to move forward with for next year? The economic benefits to me suggest that, the community as a whole has been thrilled with what we've done. What we've done, we haven't done anything Mr. Epstein's done. But there are some issues to be hashed out. So I think discussing his proposal and how we can move forward and then making recommendations to the selectmen are really the gist of what we're trying to achieve today. Kathy, do you want to weigh in at any point here?
I would just point out that Rich Bilski's also here. He does not look like himself because he has a mustachio that looks a little different, but he might want to weigh in.
Yeah, I would say from
Gosh, that's a beard too.
yeah, it's my COVID beard. I would say from our standpoint, from the community, it definitely is an issue, the sound, and the adjacent road over there with the LED panels there. I mean, I would say the illumination's an issue too for events. I'm not saying it can't be addressed, but I mean, realistically, I don't know if it should be the town hires a consultant. Should the leasee be responsible for this? But I mean, you know, if we were doing this as a project, a state project, I mean, you'd have to do a sound study. I mean, should we be looking at some kind of band shell? Should the band shell be faced at the opposite end of the property so it's projecting towards Parker River? I mean, that might help mitigate a lot of it because you'd focus the sound away from the community with, you know, the acoustical shape of the band shell. Should we be looking at a sound wall along that side of the property? You know, I mean, that's not uncommon along highway projects. You know, it'd basically be like telephone poles with a tongue and groove plank wall. You plant ivy on it. You know, so I mean, there's ways to deal with it. But you know, it's if we want to go this route, but I think we have to show that we're going to make an effort to mitigate it.
Yes.
Yeah, especially with the light panels, if they were in the southwest corner facing towards where the movie screen used to be or where they have their display, the light would be projecting towards 28, you know, not towards the neighborhoods, and same thing with the sound. But then again, we don't want to have an unintended consequence. Are we going to create issues on 28 if we're beaming all that light over to 28? I don't know. It needs to be looked at. You know, we don't
That's
want
what
to
he's-
change one problem for another.
That's what is proposed for next year.
Okay.
Reverse the direction, yeah.
Okay.
Kathy?
The light may not be the issue. It may be people wanting to see the concert for free.
Well, and again, that's part of our discussion as far as the use of the property. Do we want to be able to, you know,
I was going to say that based on what I saw of the proposal from Mr. Epstein, he wants to lease the property for the whole season, and he will lease it out to other parties if that's what happens. I was waiting for Kathy to go through the contract, but I mean, that was what I read into it, that he wanted to lease the whole property, and he would be the judge of who might come in and use it otherwise. But again, that's, and one of the bottom lines to me is whether the selectmen expect this to be a moneymaker. I mean, I've got that impression from them on occasion. And the fact that they think that this should be a money-making site. If we're going to use more benign uses like Susan suggested, then that's going to obviously dip into the revenue stream.
Mr. Chairman?
I think we've lost Jim.
I think
We
we have
lost
lost
Jim.
Jim.
The chair is among the missing.
There, he's coming back.
There he is.
There we go.
3 screens, huh, Jim?
Yeah, there you go.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a question?
You're
You're
muted. Jim.
muted.
Am I muted?
He's
No,
muted.
Oh, no, he's
Okay.
muted.
Who, Jim, muted?
Yeah.
How'd you get away with that?
offline for a couple minutes there, so.
Oh, okay, there he is.
Just,
Susan had asked to say something, so go ahead,
yeah,
Susan.
just a clarification. My understanding is the concern is mainly with the concerts, right? There was not, the original approach was the family movies, and there might, at least from reading the letters of complaint, the neighborhood is not complaining about the movies. Is that correct? It's just a live
Absolutely
concert.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there was
when-
no issue with sound with the movies. It was all inside the vehicle, so.
Right. And although you say, Rich, there may be some problem with the LED panels, but not nearly to the extent that people are concerned about the noise from
Right,
the
I
live
think-
concerts.
Right, I think the light was more with the concerts when they'd have like
Oh, okay,
flashing.
okay.
I don't think the
Okay.
movies were so
All
problematic.
right. When did it move from family night at the movies to live concerts on stage? How did that all transpire?
I think
was all
I
part of
think
the-
movies. I think my understanding, and you fill in somebody else's. The movies weren't a money making operation for them, so they migrated to live performances.
Did the Board of Selectmen agree to that?
No,
Was it in the lease?
I'm sorry,
That's
they're,
what Kathy addresses.
yeah, they specifically asked for movies, concerts, and live events. So
Okay,
in their entertainment license and the license agreement, it did allow for what he ended up doing. I think
Okay,
people
did-
just thought there would be more movies or maybe interspersed
Right.
more.
right. But did they inform at least give a courtesy call to the Board of Selectmen saying, look, we want to do more live events than movies?
I don't
Did
think
the
the
town
board,
have any? Well, the reason I'm asking is he claimed he wasn't making any money. How
Right.
do we know that? How do we know that?
well,
How do we know that he wasn't making any money?
I don't really, I guess we don't, but to me, it's irrelevant as to whether he's making money or not.
Well, but
Uh-huh.
Jimmy was using that as an excuse to migrate from an event that the neighborhood was not complaining about to something that they are complaining about. It also goes to Jack's comment about, does the Board of Selectmen expect this endeavor to make money, or is this just something to have as a neighborhood or a community or even a Cape-wide sort of activity? If they expect us to make money, then his claim that he wasn't making money, I think he has to at least present some evidence of that to the Board of Selectmen, because his desire to make money is causing problems for the community.
I
So
think, Susan,
Okay.
if I may, I think you're kind of mixing together two issues of the money.
Okay.
Whether Mr. Epstein makes money or not is his concern.
Right,
I think the question that I guess was Jack raised is whether the town expects that the town's also going to make money from it. And
Right.
they're really two different issues. But I think he knew pretty quickly within the first couple of weeks that the movies just weren't going to make enough money. They weren't going to generate enough traffic because he didn't have any new releases or any high draw materials to get people in there. And I think he just made the decision to almost eliminate the movies within about a month, as I recall,
okay,
and shift to what he did or hoped would make money, and that was more live performances and video performances.
okay. So the movies, it was more of a content as opposed to he wasn't charging enough to get in. It was, he just didn't have
He
the
didn't
content
have
to
an
attract
attractive
people. Okay,
medium.
Certainly,
Okay.
content was an issue. I mean, when you think about it, you're not going to drive down from Boston to watch a rerun of Jaws.
right,
So, but I think the bigger part of this is not how much money was made, but the question was one of the Board of Selectmen and Mr. Epstein, in my opinion, weren't quite clear as to the mix of use that was going to be used. I don't think the selectmen say you're going to have 52 movies and 32 concerts. That was never determined. I think they gave him permission to do what was best. And
right,
as a businessman, he, like David said, he's in it to make money. He did do a lot of movies at the beginning, but if you look at the numbers that he's provided to us, as far as, performances, you can clearly see that, the movies were not necessarily, breaking the bank. They weren't, I don't think, he probably lost money on them. But I think part of it is, the frequency and the usage of the property is also part of the concerns of the neighborhood,
Right.
not just the noise. Are they gonna do this every night? And if so, is there gonna be rock concerts, or is there gonna be, more, and that's part of when, and here's another issue. We can have all these discussions and we get to make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen, but I want everybody to be perfectly clear and understanding that we are not the policymakers, and all we can do is make our recommendations to the Board of Selectmen, and they are the ones that are going to enact the things that they want to. And if you recall, I'm not really sure that maybe he was our first choice, but I mean, I'd have been our second choice. But the selectmen were given 3 to pick from, and they selected him, not us. And they made the negotiations as to how the site would be used. I think part of what we need to do now is come back to them and talk about use, talk about frequency, talk about hours of operation, and those types of things, so that we can give the board.
He's frozen.
Hello?
He's
Jim again?
frozen.
Use one of your other computers.
was Saban.
Isn't? He's
Kathy,
back?
well, is he back?
No, he's still frozen.
Isn't-
Yeah.
Kathy, while he's frozen, can you give us some idea of time frame? The November 10th was mentioned as a deadline. Is that, what is that deadline?
No, it's going beyond that now.
I think
What is the deadline? Is that a self-imposed deadline, Tom, or is that something
Well,
Epstein wants, or what is
The
the?
chairman of the Board of Selectmen indicated that they had a lot on their plate relative to reviewing the articles coming up for town meeting. And
Okay,
they wouldn't be discussing that until the issue with town meeting was taken
Okay.
care of.
okay.
you're,
Got it.
you're
Okay.
muted, Karen. You're muted. There you go.
Maybe a meeting on the 19th of.
There you go, yeah.
You were muted
Thursday.
there for a while, Karen. So
I
I'm
know,
not sure.
I realized, sorry.
Karen, when you say the 19th, is to discuss the drive-in site or a general?
That's my
meeting?
understanding, Susan.
Just the drive-in site.
Correct. As far as
Okay.
I know.
Okay, got it.
There he
So we
is.
really have to come up with, as Jim said, some recommendations regarding noise frequency, the type, and the types of things between now and the 19th, correct? Is that your understanding? To make to the Board of Selectmen.
That's my understanding, but I'm
Okay.
referring to the chairman.
Okay,
I think that Kathy, in your packet, along with Mr. Epstein's proposal, Kathy had put together a very nice email that was shared with Adam and kind of did a good job framing the types of questions that maybe the committee wants to consider weighing in on.
Well, the majority of the
Kathy, do you
questions
have-
in the, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Karen.
Oh, no, I think Jim, were you starting to speak?
No, that was me.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I think that, so when Kathy shared her screen and has a list of the questions that are on there. And I think that a number of these do address some of the concerns that you've talked about in terms of sound. And could be construed as sound mitigation to some extent. I think there's additional questions, including whether or not the committee would recommend that the selectmen consider issuing a liquor license of some kind. And then also community access and other uses. There's the question of site improvements. What improvements could happen, by when, how, and again, what is the form of agreement that we have? And those are things that we need to really talk through with town council in advance of this meeting with the selectmen, so we understand what the kind of rules are in terms of what we can't do.
Karen, are there fixed dates for what we call the season? Does it start on a particular date, end on a particular date?
I know that, I think that this license, Kathy, do you have the dates of the license? It was like
The
June
existing
to
license?
October.
Yeah, the existing license right now is July 9th through October 31st. I couldn't
Okay.
tell exactly from the proposal when he was planning on starting, but I'm assuming it was the season, and he does say through October of
Yeah.
2021. And that's what he's asking for. That doesn't mean that that's what you need to recommend
Yeah.
to the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
Nice.
It might start getting difficult to do some of these major improvements that are being proposed with regard to three-phase power and fully grassing the
Right.
area. So I think, I know that Adam is here, and I don't know whether Jim was interested in having Adam go through his proposal or having me show the proposal. I didn't know how
I
you
think
wanted.
we've lost Jim again.
I'm going to stop sharing so we can see everyone easier.
Yeah, it's much easier.
Yeah, sorry.
Kathy, in the current lease, are there a specified number of days during the week, so many days, or is it
Not in the
Open-
current,
not in the current
lease.
one? Okay,
But-
so that's
And-
something
and
we could
it's-
consider too.
Correct.
But just to be specific too, it's a license that we
Right.
have in place right now.
And that's the form of the agreement that Karen was talking about. Whether it needs to be a license or whether it can even be a lease.
Right.
So those are things we have touched base with town council, and they've had some differing opinions, and we need to have further conversations with them on that.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody, maybe Tom or Rich, have any sense of the specific electrical service that he requested? Is that something that's doable? Is that a major project, or is that something we think we can undertake?
It all depends on how much he wants to feed off of that line going in.
He
wants
asked for,
3-phase power to the rear of the of it, and that's
How many amps?
significant.
he asked for
800.
800
How many-
amps, 3-phase power to the stage, and 400 amps, single-phase power to the rest of the site.
Can I just jump in? There is a message from Jim Saban, says, "I am here but can't communicate. Please run the meeting, Kathy." I think I'm going to defer to David Reed, as I believe, or Tom is vice chair, right?
Yeah,
He's vice
sure.
chair. Okay, I'm going to defer
Let
to
me-
Tom Roach as vice chair.
Can we get back to the basis of all of the comments from the abutters, the emails that we received? They're all directed towards sound amplification. And seems to me that Mr. Epstein took some measures in order to control some of these acoustics. Is that where the breakdown is in regards to not being amplified, not having the proper sound devices that aren't going to just mitigate into the area? I mean, there has to be some kind of a solution. So from this committee standpoint, that they go back and show some consideration for the abutters. You know, they're looking at a quality of life issue, but we're also looking at the revenue that's being brought into the town as a result of some of these bans and what have you. So I'm sure that there's a way of coexisting here. And I think that's what we have to do, bring forward to the selectmen and just help them understand that there are some grievances that have merit, but in the same token, the benefit to the town has been quite a bit.
Tom?
Yeah.
I think Rich mentioned the possibility of maybe getting some sort of an acoustical engineer or having some sort of a more formal evaluation of the sound distribution. Is that possible?
Well, listen, seems to me I read some emails and I think some of the abutters mentioned that as well.
A formal sort of, rather than a chart from the entrepreneur, a more independent analysis of, okay, got it. Okay.
I think that would go a long way in regards to helping the abutters understand the town's concern for them. And I think
do too.
that, you know, I'm not sure what it would cost. I'm not sure if we have any funds available to even go down that road.
Well, don't we
Hey, Tom, we
Yeah,
actually do. We have $40,000 available to us.
Right.
Well,
We should use
don't.
every penny of it.
so I think that might be something for this committee to look at. And like I said, it's 6 of one, half a dozen the other. But if Mr. Epstein is the only game in town and he's been successful, then I think that what we have to do is try really hard to mitigate some of these situations relative to the abutters.
Tom, I think even if he weren't the only game in town, if we were going to continue to consider this kind of activity during the summertime, I think the town needs to know, or even the Board of Selectmen, they need to know the acoustical ramifications of what's going on. So I think regardless
Oh,
of whether it's
absolutely.
Epstein, I think it would be a great thing to have, just to have it as part of our file.
Yep.
Tom, can I make a point? Jack McCormick speaking.
Yes, Jack.
I think we're talking about measuring the sound. I think that's going to be kind of difficult now that the season is over. I mean, I'm not sure how we can do that before next year.
Well,
Anyone have any ideas on that? Or-
Yes,
I,
they have,
I'm
Jack,
not sure. Go ahead.
Jack, I understand that they have actual technology that if, and I'm using, I don't know, decibels from whatever, but let's say something is 10 decibels. They have technology that can measure 10 decibels and how far it goes to the right, to the left, up, down, and the implications of 10 decibels in a closed area, in an open area. So I think the technology is there. I would assume we would have to take the data that we already have from the Epstein concerts. They have to have some idea of the decibel levels and sort of plug that into a program and have an environmental engineer evaluate it for us.
Oh, I agree.
Adam just wrote in his chat what I was just going to say, which is that he was taking decibel readings pretty much throughout the season. Now,
Good.
is this a NASA level kind of sound mitigation assessment? Maybe not, but again, it's just one of those things that he's done to try to put some facts on the table instead of just impressions and so on. And could certainly have somebody more knowledgeable than I take a look at those numbers and maybe draw some conclusions.
Right. Good.
Well, I'm sure the abutters would be more satisfied with a company that does that for a business, and I think it would appease them. David?
Yeah, I think this year's past performance is, as I understand his proposal to us, and it's going to go to the selectmen, is largely academic because what he proposed is an entirely different setup for next year. What he's
Yeah.
proposed now is a set of acoustical speakers
Right.
that somehow control the distribution of the sound. I don't know how that works acoustically, but he's proposing to reverse the direction. And instead of having FM radio broadcast to your car speaker, he's proposing what appears to be a whole set of acoustical speakers that will direct the sound to particular locations. And I think it's what we should probably be doing at this point is simply recommending to the selectmen that Mr. Epstein demonstrate to them that what he's proposing will in fact work and solve the problems of the past year.
Well, I agree, and I think that,
don't.
didn't he have the opportunity to implement those new type of sound systems just recently?
The current license said no exterior amplification was allowed.
Okay.
And that does not appear to be what he's proposing for next year.
Right. But
Correct.
David, I think that in order to have more credibility, and as Tom said, to sort of loop in the neighbors,
Yeah.
I think we need an independent acoustical analysis of what he's proposing and have the engineers say to the Board of Selectmen, it's a go or like, let's say they're proposing 60 decibels and have the engineer say, that's the equivalent of a jet plane taking off in your backyard or whatever they do to sort of explain decibel levels. And I think, I really think it needs to be an independent analysis, not something that the entrepreneur is telling us.
I'm back, kind of, sort of. I'm on my phone and on my computer, and I tell you what, I could put a man on the moon. He just won't get back.
Okay.
So I've been kind of listening to a lot of the discussion, and I apologize for my technical savvy or lack thereof. So decibel readings have been something that have been done on a regular basis, not only by
Right.
the neighbors, but Mr. Epstein. And so, and then the question becomes one of, I don't even think, and Kathy or Karen, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there aren't any state standards as far as what is an acceptable decibel level. And the town doesn't have a bylaw that says decimal levels can be to a certain degree. So that would be one issue. The other part of it is with concerns for time. And if we're going to suggest that Mr. Epstein move forward with the town, and we also suggest that we want experts on audio sound, I don't think that leaves enough time for for him to put his marketing plan together and get satisfactory results back from any audio experts on the issue. So I hear what you're saying. I don't think that in this case we can walk and chew bubble gum at the same time. You either need to make a recommendation to move forward with mitigation with regards to sound, or I would suggest the other option is to say, no, we don't recommend moving forward until we have experts on sound. I mean, those are really your two choices as far as I can see.
Would it be possible, Jim, for an audio expert to look at what Mr. Epstein is proposing for the upcoming year and just make a determination in regards to that?
Right.
Karen, did you want to say something?
No, I was thinking similar, Tom. I think it's a good idea. I like David's suggestion very much, that Adam's proposal, to the selectmen, the sound mitigation, and then maybe we can get an independent expert of some kind to evaluate that.
I mean, if we have to have
No,
if we have to have some verbiage around all that, I'm fine with just saying that the issue will continue to be explored by both parties. I mean, this is not anything we're going to get resolved anytime soon, and especially in terms of the proof in the pudding, not until the next concert. So, we can't wait till next spring to deal with that. We can just, as I said, just say we'll continue to investigate.
I don't think that's good enough. I don't think the neighbors are gonna take
No,
that.
I don't think it is either.
Well, I think
That's just kicking the can down the road.
Yeah,
Well,
Mr. Chairman, why don't we move away from sound for now and carry on? I mean, we've been on this for long enough. Something has to be done about it. We agree on that. Let's move forward with the rest of the agreement.
Well, thank you, Jack. I think you're right. We've really talked about this a lot. And maybe the answer is to suggest, as Bud has said, that, we make a recommendation that they bring in a sound expert, but also
Right.
that we implement the mitigation that Mr. Epstein has suggested, things such as
Right.
turning the stage in the opposite direction, addressing the issue of amplification. So I think we can move forward simultaneously with both cases.
Agreed.
With him moving forward with changing the way that they amplify and the direction of the stage, and at the same time, the town can work to get an expert in to look and have a suggestion and work. It's been my experience that Mr. Epstein has been more than willing to work with this community. And I would suggest, and I can't speak on his behalf, but if I would allow him to speak, he would probably say that he'd be willing to hear from audio experts and work with them as well. So I think to put the sound issue to bed, and I'll ask for a vote, is that our recommendation is that a sound expert be brought in to analyze the site with regards to sound distribution.
With the new system that Mr. Epstein is going to be
Right.
using for next year.
For the 2021 season.
Okay, so can I get a motion on that? I can't make the motion, it's on the chair.
Well, before we do this, I think the sound expert there'd be three things we'd want them to look at. We'd want to
Yeah.
look at the stage orientation and the configuration of the stage. That'd be one. Two would be the sound system and how it distributes it. And then three, if we're paying for this to be done, throw in, they can analyze the sound, the option of throwing a sound wall along the eastern property line too. I mean, western, excuse me.
Well, I think rather than a sound wall would be the point, it would be
Mitigation.
recommendations for mitigation.
Well,
'Cause they may say a sound wall ain't gonna help you.
Well, actually, a sound wall is, I'm not advocating that as the primary one, Jim, but that is a form of mitigation. We use it all the time. So I'm just trying to say is if you're paying the money, don't pay to have him come out multiple times. Have him do his evaluation and his readings and look at all three of those things. We might as well just have that and we'll have it in our back pocket.
Good point.
And then we can make an honest thing. Hey, look, a sound wall won't do anything. Or
Right.
look, AB doesn't, but if we add the sound wall, it will solve all the problems. So we should know the answer that we're going to get hit with.
Correct.
I don't disagree with that, but I think if we say recommendations for mitigation, a sound wall would be one of the things that they're either going to recommend or not recommend.
Well, no, but they should
So-
analyze it, Jim, to see is in other
Will it
words,
work?
we're going to look at the stage. That's option one. Option two, they're going to look at this new hybrid, distributed amplification system. That might be enough just for the
Right.
stage and that. And then option three, additionally, is you have a sound wall. We should look at all of them and see, do we get what we need? We might not need the sound wall, might not even work, but at least we'll be able to answer those questions when they come up.
Right. And you all see in your
And-
packet, the proposal that Epstein has brought forward. There is some discussions with regards to line array technology and measures engineered to suit the drive-in. And he's already started to look he understands the issue of sound. So I think, we need to look at that as well, but let's move this forward. And if there's a recommendation on the issue of sound, I'll take a motion from a member of the committee.
Well, I recommend that we look at those three options in regards to sound study.
Okay, is that in a motion?
Or I make
What's
the
the-
motion.
Okay, the motion is what, Rich? Please repeat it.
I make the motion that we analyze the stage and location and shape. Number two, what'd you call that, Jim? That linear sound system?
Line array.
What is
Line
that?
array.
The line
Line-
array system, yeah, and how that will address acoustics on the site. And then three, a sound wall.
And that's from an audio expert, correct?
Correct.
An acoustical engineer.
An audio engineer. Yeah,
Engineer, yep.
that specializes in
Sound distribution.
acoustical mitigation or something like that.
Would it be prudent to analyze what Mr. Epstein is using now and compare it with the new system that he intends to use?
That might,
So let me interrupt. I understand what everybody's trying to do, but personally, I don't want to start micromanaging the sound people. I think if we present them with the issue of what we're dealing with is, a site that is potential to have these types of venue participation, how do we mitigate sound for the community, for the surrounding neighborhood? That's really what everybody wants to know is, I don't care if it
True.
works system A or B, what is the impact of the sound and how do we mitigate it? Because isn't that what we all want to know?
Exactly.
Isn't our task on the table to determine what we should recommend to the selectmen next week or the week after for their
Correct.
consideration of the 2021 proposal? If so, I think that perhaps we can be a little bit more generic and say that we endorse or recommend that they consider Mr. Epstein's proposal for 2021, but that we have serious concerns about the noise impact on the neighborhood, and that we ask that they, in making their decision about next year, give considerable thought to the issue of noise and perhaps require either that the applicant or that the town engage independent acoustical expertise on what the best solution is to be able to go forward with this kind of proposal in the future.
Right.
So moved.
Second.
Who moved it? I'm sorry, I missed that.
I can't. My point being is that I agree
I did.
completely with what David said.
So David moved that?
I guess so.
And who seconded it? I'm sorry.
I
Tom
did.
seconded it. I think David's hit it right on the head. I mean, that's what we're here to do is make recommendations to the board. And our recommendation, as David said, is for them to look at sound.
Yep.
Okay? There's a motion. Any discussion? Hearing none. I'll take a roll call vote. Jack McCormick. I think he's muted, but said aye or nay. I'm not sure what.
Hang on.
Unmuted, yes.
Okay, Tom,
Yes.
David,
Yes,
Susan,
Yes,
Bud,
Aye.
Rich,
I think I'll abstain. I don't think it goes quite far enough.
okay, keep in mind this, and I vote aye. So the motion passes to recommend. The next thing I want to talk about is with regards to the frequency of events.
What?
one of the frequency of events.
Okay.
How often do we want to have these things? I mean, that's another concern of the neighborhood is this is every single night or, Kathy, you have something to add with regards to frequency?
I don't know if you want to, I don't know if everyone's comfortable having gone through the proposal. I don't know whether people want, we had kind of done a brief summary of what was in the proposal on a one page. I don't know if people want to talk about that or they're comfortable with what's there, with what was presented in the packet, which was online, so people have access to it.
I don't have the page number, but I'm looking at a graphic that he proposed, weekly recurring events. Mondays to be family movie night under the stars.
Right.
Wednesdays to be symphony/film series with the orchestra performing. And then without specifying days, concerts featuring local musicians and concerts featuring national musicians, as well as some plays and some musicals depending on COVID restrictions. I think clearly what we got this year was not what we envisioned. That's not
Right.
to say it was wrong, but it was just not what we had in mind. And shame on us for not asking for more specifics perhaps. But this year, I think we should recommend to the selectmen that they get more specifics in terms of their schedule. How many movies, how frequently, how many concerts and how frequently, and just ask Mr. Epstein to be more specific on his schedule, more specific than even this single page outline gives, and tell us exactly, or at least approximately, what he envisions to be the actual schedule so people know what they're voting on. And we got to throw it back to him and to tell us what he can do and what he can't do, and give us more specific parameters.
But the movies don't seem to be an issue.
I
Is
don't
that
think
correct?
those are. No.
I agree with what David said. I think we need to find out, and that's what was one of our flaws from this year. We said movies and concerts. Well, we never said how many movies and how many concerts or how frequently they would be. So
Right.
I think David's point is well taken. Kathy, are you raising your hand to
Yeah.
raise your hand? Because
Yeah,
you're supposed to
I'm
push that
raising-
little button.
I'm raising my hand. Hopefully you can just see me. And again, my interpretation of the plan that was shown was that you would have these little coves where there's like 440 coves where people would be parking elsewhere and sitting down on the coves. If
Right.
that's the situation. I don't know whether even in a movie, I mean, no one's going to be driving and parking like they're doing now. The whole goal is to have the cars elsewhere and have people walking and sitting on grass and enjoying the presentation. So I think we need to get away from what was last year with everything through an FM radio. And I think it's a question for Adam, is even the movies going to ultimately be through this line array system? I think there's Rich had some great ideas with regard to looking at a noise analysis and future mitigation. That's something that was going to be part of the whole project. So that's something that we were going to be investigating as we're moving forward with design and permitting for the whole thing. We have this unusual circumstance this year with COVID-19 and the great advantage that it brought to our community with by bringing business and people to Yarmouth. And the idea is, do we want to extend that for one more season while we're working on other things? And if we're doing that, we're not going to necessarily have all of these mitigation measures in place. So I think the frequency of events plays a major role. I think all of us know that if something's happening next to us every single day, we feel differently about it if it's, a couple times a week or, 10 or 15 times a season. So I think that plays a significant role in the sound for next season specifically. I think we can do a lot of other mitigation measures as we move forward with the design for the event space, but I don't think we're going to be able to get power and grass and a sound mitigation wall all by next summer. It's a lot to ask.
Yeah, hey, Kathy, with what you're saying then is I kind of agree. I don't think it makes sense for us to do any power yet until we know ultimately what this site
sure.
will look like or where the stage is going to be ultimately or what we end up building. I mean, grass maybe makes more sense. That's something that would, benefit us in any situation. And that's relatively low cost, to screen the site and then just reseed it. But I do think that makes sense.
And by doing that, it gives us a more of a park-like setting for what we're doing. you know, and Kathy mentioned, if you look at the proposal, it is to do it more like a park-like setting by having, I think he called them coves, or that individual groups of up to 6 or 8, I think was the number, would sit together. But if you look at his pictures, they're all on the lawn. The question then
Right.
becomes, what do you do with the cars?
Right.
So,
I
And
just
I'm sure
pulled up
that's
the
something that-
plan.
and I don't know, okay, so if that's planned, well, he's got a couple of, I don't know if that's all seating or if there's cars there or not. So that would have to be one of the questions we'd need him to come back to us with. Yeah, see, those are the layouts. As you can see, I mean,
Right.
conceptually, I like the idea of being able to sit on the lawn and watch a movie with my grandkids.
Right.
But again, where do we park all those cars? And I'm not sure where that's shown and what kind of plan Mr. Epstein would have, or anybody else, to, do you
Where are you
park
gonna put the
vehicles
right, where-
off-site? We've had that
Right.
discussion with regards to off-site parking with other events at the site, and we're concerned about, you know, are
Right.
they gonna park down at the old, no, it's not old, but the Moose Lodge, or are they gonna park here or there, and off-site and ship them in? So I think parking is a big issue as to how he's going to move forward. So I think we need to get a recommendation from him as to his layout with regards to, you know, site layout as far as parking is concerned.
Right.
So
And there
Jim-
might be a possibility of the shuttle buses we've talked about.
Yeah, it may be. I think we just need to hear from him. And I know he's here and is probably hearing all this. I just haven't accepted any comment from the public, even though he's a subject of our discussion right now. And I'm sure he can get some of these answers to us. Kathy or Karen, I don't know if you're communicating with him, if there's anything that we need to add, that, you know, the number of cars, you know, I think he talked 400 parking spots, or 400
Jim.
people.
Jim,
Yes.
he just sent the group. He just said the parking would be walkable. It just popped up on the screen there.
Okay, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
I don't know
From
what that,
where?
I think we need to be
Where?
careful with the chat box, because this
Some
is,
parking would be via shuttle.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, we
is
need
there you
is
go.
that chat box something that can be seen by the public as well?
no, it's not. And that's why
Okay,
if
so
there's
then
let me
anything in
stop
there,
that right
it needs to be read in, either no one's chatting or you need to read it out into the
Right.
record.
Yes,
Right.
thank
So
you. I
Adam-
wanted to-
Yeah, Adam said most of the mitigation I pay for, but some things the town would need to pay for. A sound wall barrier would be the town's effort, since that would be largely permanent. I'd handle the reset. I'm not sure what that means. You only need parking for 440 cars. Some parking would be on site. Some parking would be walkable. Some parking would be via shuttle. And then I'll stop.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Susan.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a motion that one of the recommendations that the committee make to the Board of Selectmen is that the licensee come up with a comprehensive parking plan? Where, how many, and whether people are going to pay for it, and if they do pay for it, how much of that the town is going to realize in revenue. But we need a
Okay.
comprehensive parking plan.
So Susan, are you putting that in the form of a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that the Drive-In Site Utilization Committee recommend to the Board of Selectmen that the licensee present to the Board of Selectmen and the committee a comprehensive parking plan for the 2021 season.
Okay, that's the motion. Do I have a second?
Second,
And the second was by Mr. Roach. Any additional discussion?
Well, I do.
Okay,
I
go
I
ahead,
don't know what,
David.
I don't know quite what that means. He's proposed 2 different schematics on how he wants to rearrange the site for next year. But
Right,
is that a comprehensive parking plan? Is that
no,
what you're asking for?
that is not a comprehensive parking plan. He
Okay.
says this, we need parking for 440 cars. Where? How are we gonna get them from the parking spot down to the drive-in site? Are you gonna charge for parking? If he's gonna if we have to compensate someone for using their lot, like the Moose Lodge, who's gonna, how's that gonna be collected? And of that amount, how much is the town gonna get? We need a comprehensive parking plan. He's recommending, and I like the idea of people sitting on the grass and enjoying themselves. That's only gonna work if they can get there. And that if we're keying off what the Chamber of Commerce said, a lot of these people coming from out of town, where are they gonna park? And how are we gonna get them from where they're parking to the site? That's what I mean by a comprehensive parking plan.
So if what you mean is he has to present a more detailed plan on parking on site as well as any remote parking, if that's what he's proposing.
That's comprehensive.
Okay.
Yeah, keep in mind,
I think we need to explain what you mean by the comprehensive plan, because I didn't envision he's going to have off-site parking, but if that's part of his plan, certainly that should be presented to the selectmen as part of his proposal.
I think he mentioned off-site parking,
Okay,
or someone mentioned off-site parking.
He did.
Okay, so that's part of a
Some parking would be
comprehensive
walkable and some parking would be via shuttle.
okay.
So he'd
Correct.
have to lay out that to the board for their
plan. Yes,
acceptance. Tom,
Yep.
you had tried to weigh in there. Did you have something you want to add?
well, no, I'm just thinking at some point he may have some quite prominent acts come in, talent, what have you. And which would really make a situation, kind of cumbersome if he tries to, park all those vehicles. And I think that's one of the concerns also.
mhm,
Well, yeah, good
Some
business-
well-known acts, well-known,
Right.
right.
people that would draw more people. And
Right,
that's what
and-
we want. We want
Right.
more tourists. We want people. We want
Right.
to take care of our residents as well. The bottom line is you have to account for that.
Right,
Yeah.
and Tom, that's what I mean by comprehensive. In the event,
Right.
and he's the guy
right.
putting on the shows, in the event that
That's-
that happens, and that's what he's contemplating, how do you intend to take care of all the parking? That's part of a comprehensive plan.
Yep,
Okay, so
agreed.
there's a motion. Any additional discussion with regards to the issue of parking? Hearing none. All in favor of Susan's motion, say aye. Oh, wait a minute, I can't do it that
Roll
way.
call.
Yep, go ahead. Tom,
Yes.
David,
Yes,
Jack,
as explained.
as explained, yes. Bud,
Yes,
Rich,
Yes.
I vote yes. Susan, I'm assuming you vote yes
Yes,
on your own article. Okay, so great. So we're going to make a recommendation to move forward with regards to parking. Another issue is the issue of alcohol, of serving of beer and wine. It gets rather complicated because the state's licensing requirements, rules and regulations as to what they do as far as issuing of liquor licenses, or I hate to use the word liquor because liquor is like vodka, etc. And we're talking really more beer and wine, only beer and wine. The rules for brick and mortar restaurant and
I'm sorry
bar-
to interrupt, but unfortunately I have a 5:15 call I need to jump on.
Okay, are you telling us you're leaving us? I think he left. So the point I'm making is that restaurants and bars fall under a different licensing than a venue like this, which is not, its restrictions are different. So I think in my understanding, and Kathy or Karen, either or even David, correct me, he'd have to pick specific dates and times for him to want to have a beer and wine distribution. We couldn't give him one that says, what, you can only do 30 a year, 30 days a year per business, I think is what it is.
If I can clarify that,
Yep.
it's a liquor license like you have at a restaurant, like you said, it has to be brick and mortar and you have to have a specific premises. What the alcohol that could be served on this site would be through a special alcohol license, and that's only good for 30 days of service per year. And a special alcohol license for for-profit entities only allows for the sale of beer and wine. Only nonprofits could sell liquor through a special alcohol license. So there's up to 30 days. When we had the previous hearing, it has to be specific days that are listed for that license. So I think if you guys are talking about it, you might say something where you're supportive of up to 30 days of, beer and wine sale through a special alcohol license, with the dates to be specified depending upon the events that Adam chooses to, or books to have the alcohol to. Or you don't have to say 30, you could say whatever number you want, but that's the maximum.
So
Kathy,
Kathy,
do we know if alcohol is permitted on the site?
Alcohol would be permitted on the site through a special alcohol license, which is
No,
issued.
no, I'm talking about the site, people that go to these functions. You
only-
drive in, you have alcohol in your vehicle.
You're not supposed to. No, you're not
Okay.
supposed to. No. And it's much easier, I think, to manage that if your people are parking their cars elsewhere and then walking in, because you're not going to walk in necessarily with a
Right,
giant
exactly.
cooler because you can check those versus in the trunk of your car. No one was checking the trunk of the car in the driving. So this could be
Yeah.
monitored much more closely.
So I think the rules with regards to the alcohol issue is really similar to what we have in place in other town-owned facilities, beaches and Flax Pond, et cetera. So yeah, you can't just bring in a six-pack of beer and watch an event.
Good.
Kathy, one of my questions is that 30 days, does it have to be contiguous 30 days or can it be, 3 days here, 5 days there, 2 days there?
It is my understanding that it does not need to be contiguous. There's been some clarification on that with Linda Hill from the licensing. I think originally she had thought that it needed to be, but that now it does not need to be. What he applied for previously was not consecutive.
Anybody else want to weigh in on the subject of beer and wine licensing?
Kathy, when you say year, was it a calendar year or a year from the date of operation?
Calendar year.
Calendar year,
yeah.
okay.
Jim, I was just.
Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, no, I think I stated before that, I think we could recommend they consider alcohol, but I would leave that right in the selectman pocket. I mean, it's a licensing board anyway.
We, our last recommendation was that he be given the 2 weekends to try it out and see how it works. And I was kind of disappointed that didn't work out for him, but because that would have been a nice controlled test for us. I think, Jack,
Well, I was hoping for,
I think
yeah.
we can recommend that they consider it because it seems to be financially essential to his business model that he have that opportunity, at least on some occasions. And if the state says it cannot be more than 30 days total for his season, that's a limitation I wasn't aware of, but my understanding actually on special licenses is that the state takes a pretty much hands-off approach and leaves it up to the town. I guess it's because it's more short-term and more limited in controlling. I don't have a major objection to it. I think the selectmen are going to want to watch it carefully and put some restrictions on it. And I think the problem is they're going to need to know what the dates are and not just have a blanket or floating 30-day license. I think they're going to want dates
They have to.
for specific events.
I think if I understand Kathy's understanding of it is that they have to give us specific dates. Unless they just say 30 days from June 1st to July 1st or whatever. But otherwise they'd have to give us the specific dates if they're different than the 30 contiguous. But I think it's important that we have specific dates. Then we have an understanding of what those dates are. But the other part of it is the Board of Selectmen still has control to say to them, yeah, you've got 30 days, but you know what, after the third day, you have, drunken brawl in the parking lot. We can take your license back. So they have total control over that 30 days anyhow. So my suggestion is that you say, give them the opportunity to do beer and wine, and understanding that the Board of Selectmen have control of that on-off switch, which they do. Anybody else have anything to say on that?
Jim, and I'm following up on that. If you want that kind of check and balance, I would recommend if the Board of Selectmen does do something like that, it be written in the contract or in the license that the town retains sole authority to cancel at any time.
I think they do.
Do
have
they?
that.
Anyway,
Okay. Is
That
that
language
actually,
is,
it's stated?
I think it's kind of an understood.
They have
But is
that
it-
authority as the licensing authority. They are in effect the licensing authority for alcohol.
And it's clearly understood. We don't have to state it in the license itself.
They will state it in their alcohol license.
Okay,
Or on the
that's all.
back or
Okay.
as part of the issuance of it.
Okay.
But, I think that, the concerns with it being a quote drive-in and serving alcohol is really not I hear people's concerns with it, but if you go to an event there and you get 2 beers, what is the difference between going to the event there and getting 2 beers, or going to Captain Parker's or one of the local restaurants across the street and getting 2 beers, then going to the event?
Mhm.
So,
Or
I
going
mean,
to the event and take your own beer.
which
Right.
you can't, and that's another thing I would say is
Well,
that
yes, I know you can't,
Yeah,
but
but they do.
I bet you it's done.
It is
they
done.
may, but I will tell you this, if it's run anything like this year, they had an army of people walking around making sure you had your mask on and that you followed all the COVID requirements. So I could only imagine that those types of behaviors will be something that would be closely monitored. Certainly by his demonstration from how he did this year with monitoring for COVID, I would think that that would be another, because it's to his advantage to make sure that people are not breaking the rules, because the town
True,
can take a
very
license
true.
if we let it happen.
True.
So,
This would actually be more of like a park venue where you go, you park elsewhere, and then you walk
Right.
into the event and sit down. So there's no more drive-in being proposed for the 2021
right.
season.
Even for the movies, Kathy, right?
That's my understanding, and unless we ask Adam to clarify that's my understanding.
No,
that-
that
That
was
is
my understand. Yeah, that was my understanding too, because you couldn't set up the pods and then
Correct.
take them down because the
Right.
next night's a movie. So it's going to be one or the other. Got it.
So that
Okay.
takes away the argument of drinking and driving. So,
Correct.
okay. So let me get back to our recommendation with regards to alcohol. David, do you want to touch base on that one?
Well, I don't have a strong feeling about it one way or the other, but it seems to me it's essential to his business model that he have a chance to try that. And I think our recommendation can be in that context, that we recognize that in order for him to be able to afford to bring quality entertainment, some of which is money making, some of which isn't, but nevertheless benefits the community, that he needs to have a chance to try that. And to be able to turn a profit. Otherwise, he can't afford to get good acts. And if he doesn't have good acts, he's not going to get people coming. So I think our recommendation should be that based upon his business projections, that we recommend that the selectmen consider granting a special alcohol license, beer and wine license for some of the events during the 2021 season. And let them sort out the details in terms of which nights and which events.
Yes.
It would also help him offset the cost for the new acoustics.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe they granted like for just Friday night and Saturday night license or something like that.
True.
The rest of the week would be alcohol.
But that's their purview.
That might get him his 30 days if they
Yeah.
did it on just weekends only or something like that.
Okay. Everybody agree with what David just said? Any
Is that a
edits?
motion? Is that a motion, David?
Yes.
Thank you.
Second
Okay,
that
so
motion.
David made a motion, Jack seconded. Any additional discussion? Okay. Susan, aye or nay?
No, no,
Susan recommends no. Tom,
Yes,
Rich,
Yes.
Jack?
Yes,
Okay, and I also agree and vote yes. Um,
David votes yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
oh, I'm sorry, I assumed David because you made the motion, so that's. Okay, so we're making a lot of progress. Another issue was discussed earlier was exclusivity. You know, that's a tough one. Because he's going to have an extensive amount of equipment that needs to be protected. And if we allow anybody to use the facilities, then he's got to find a way to secure that area. How do we allow for others to use the site? So, for example, Country Fest or Irish Fest or Jim Saban Fest.
ask him to put it on. Ask him to sponsor it.
Well,
Pardon me?
becomes, so then you're giving him exclusive rights to use the facility.
Well, if the town has an event it wants to go forward with, it can talk to him. Or any other entity that comes into town could talk to him. And then there would be, a kickback to the town, obviously, along with what his cost would be.
But
That's if
again,
we're
that
giving
gives
him
it,
exclusive.
Mr. Chairman, just to reiterate, early on, I said that I thought that was part of his proposal, that he would be considered the licensee for the whole summer, and any other events would have to go through his license. I thought that was in that proposed agreement. Maybe Kathy or Karen could correct me.
Kathy, are you raising your hand?
My only comment was there needs to be a full exclusivity is not something that's going to be allowed through a license agreement. The things that make it a license agreement is that it's revocable and that it's not fully exclusive. There is some language in the current license agreement that Adam was fine with, and that's the type of thing that we need to talk to town council a little bit more about and have a little bit further conversations. So exclusivity may be something that comes out of, it may not even be fully allowed through a license agreement. But we'll know more when we talk to town council.
Maybe this also goes back to what we talked about earlier of him providing a more detailed schedule. If he provides the selectmen with an actual calendar of which days he has events planned, then I think the selectmen ought to be allowed to approve individual event licenses for the days when he doesn't have something planned. Now, there's a logistical issue of him protecting his equipment and his investment. And I don't think we can require that he make that available for anybody else free of charge. But it may entirely be possible for smaller events to be approved without interfering with his equipment or his personnel on days when he does not have something else scheduled. And I think we will want to leave that available, because one of my concerns is that we never envisioned this to be a single user site. We wanted to have a variety of community and nonprofit and all other types of events available to come here. I think, again, for this coming year, because we don't have inquiries from other people and we don't have time to do both requests for proposals and try to accommodate his proposal at the same time. Maybe for this year, we have to simply build in or recommend that the selectmen build in the option for other people to use the site on days that he does not have events scheduled.
And what would be his obligation?
Did he make the site available?
To let people use the site, not his equipment
Right.
and not his personnel, but to
Right,
use the
but the
rest of the
site.
site.
Remember, I think it's very poor public policy to give a private person exclusive use or exclusive control over public property. I think David's right. We can give him the license and he lays out his days, but the Board of Selectmen and the town as the public entity control that site always because it's public property.
Right.
And if there are days that he's not using it and someone wants to come in and run a craft fair or something, the town retains the right to let the property be used as such. He should not have ever have exclusive control over public property. The town owns the property.
So if I understand Kathy's original comments was that cannot happen because we certainly want to have the Jim Saban Fest and
Right.
wouldn't want that to be influenced, but
Jim
He-
Saban Pirate Fest.
oh yeah, my Pirate Fest, yeah. So Susan, I think you're right, is that he cannot have exclusivity.
Right.
Am I correct in that, Kathy?
That's my understanding from what I've heard from the town council. Like I say, we need further discussion, but yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think the discussion with town council is whether this qualifies as a license or a lease.
Right.
The
That's
lease-
where
A
Exactly.
lease requires that it go
Yep.
out for bids.
Yep.
A license does not, and where you draw the
Exactly.
line is beyond me at the moment, but
It's revocability
Right.
and exclusivity.
exclusivity. Yeah.
Those are the two big.
Do we know if there were any entities that came forward this year to
He
look
told
at the?
He told us that there were several, but they just didn't work out. There was somebody who wanted a graduation ceremony, and they couldn't work out the details, and there was something else that somebody wanted, and I think it just didn't happen, but he was amenable to working with other groups this summer.
I think there was a bank event for bank employees. I don't know which bank, and
That was Cape Cod 5.
Hip Hop 5. And then I'd also draw attention to this past weekend's Halloween event, which was a big success in conjunction with the Chamber of Commerce and the Yarmouth Recreation Department.
Mhm.
So he's clearly demonstrated a willingness to cooperate and have
Yeah.
others use it.
Absolutely.
I know that the college, in talking to my wife, had talked to them about trying to do the Cape Cod Community College graduation there, but I think there was some logistics issues that they couldn't work out. But I agree that it can't be exclusive use, and I think that's part of what town council needs to weigh in on. And I just want to try to get near the end of this and wrap up this meeting. One of the important things I think we need to stress. Now, we have spent for the last 2 hours going over all of this proposal and making some suggestions and recommendations. Who gets to negotiate the final negotiations with Mr. Epstein? Because, dealing with a community is completely different than dealing with a private sector business, where you can walk into a VP and make a deal. A deal in this town is 3 people. So we can make all these recommendations, but it's ultimately going to go back to the Board of Selectmen. And I think there needs to be a front person somewhere in this town that works out these issues that we just outlined with Mr. Epstein and bringing forward an agreement to the Board of Selectmen as a whole. And whether that be the town administrator, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, or the nominating chair, or the licensing chair, or the person who sits in any of the other chairs, I don't really care. But I think, we need to give Mr. Epstein the courtesy of an individual to work with so that they can negotiate some of this stuff to be able to bring forward a viable proposal that everybody can work with. Because otherwise,
Jim,
you're going to get a Tuesday Selectmen's meeting that's going to be craziness.
Jim, could I make a suggestion?
Sure,
What
go ahead,
about-
Susan.
What about making a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen that they identify a point of contact that will, of course, look at the recommendations we're making to the Board of Selectmen, evaluate them, and work with Epstein to, iron out any of the wrinkles. Make it a responsibility of the Board of Selectmen to identify an independent sort of third party that will take our recommendations and work with Epstein, assuming the board accepts all our recommendations, and work with Epstein, but make it their responsibility to get someone to do it.
Jim,
Go ahead, David.
when we were going over the licensing agreement and trying to standardize it last year, it seems to me we had this very same discussion
We did.
about who would actually negotiate the details and things like that. And I think we ultimately decided that since the selectmen are the ones who were going to make the decision on each and every license, that it wasn't our purview to identify how they go through that process, that we leave that to them, whether they want the town manager to do the negotiating or whether they want to have a liaison amongst their own board or whatever. That's their decision. And we didn't make any recommendation other than just leaving that to them because that's their authority, not ours.
Some of the emails that we received were from Mr. Epstein and to Dan, and then back and forth. So I'm sure that they must have been in some kind of dialogue relative to the issues as they came up.
I agree, David. It is their purview, but having sat there on Tuesday nights, I think sometimes they need to be led in the right direction as to how they should be thinking. And
And Jim, I also thought the conversation was to help Epstein identify someone that Epstein could go to that would be sort of the go-to person. I don't care if we make a recommendation or not, but I do think that either we make a recommendation to the board that they identify someone, or the board on its own, drawing on its past experience, as you say, from David, from what happened before, they on their own will identify someone. But at some point, I think Epstein needs to know who can he go to, who is the point person to go to get the answers to all these questions, or at least to work with. Whether we make the recommendation or whether the board on its own, as it has in the past, maybe identifies the town administrator. But I think from a management point of view, it's important that someone be the point person for all of these things going on right now.
And that person could be helpful to this committee as well.
Right.
it's
certainly the neighbors. And certainly
it's not
the
just,
neighbors.
and it's not just this particular individual in this particular process, but the fact of the matter is, into the future, anybody who wants to do something with the town needs to have that person that,
Right.
it's just like, in community development, they know they go see Karen and Kathy. Those are the front people, you know. If it's a building issue, they know go see Mark.
Right.
Well, this is an issue of who uses the drive-in site. Who do we go to? Who do we negotiate with? Who do we talk to? The answer is, I don't know.
Right. And it's also an activity that I think is going to be very fluid for several years until we
So-
find, you know, the right thing, the right fit, or the thing that we all agree is the best use, during the summertime. And it's important. You're right. I think from a management point of view, and it builds up, you know, historic data and historic sort of background so that we can talk about what happened 3 years ago, or what happened 2 years ago with some sense of certainty.
Yeah, and so my suggestion is, as part of our recommendations, that we recommend that the Board of Selectmen consider a front person for negotiation, the discussion with future users of this site, be it
Right.
Mr. Epstein or anybody else, but
Right.
there needs to be a go-to guy or gal in the community that
Right.
anybody who wants to utilize this site, either be Mr. Epstein or anybody else,
Right.
goes to get their questions answered and to help put together something to bring forward to a Board of Selectmen that then can act on it. Because
Right.
right now, you know, we've got all these suggestions and stuff. It's going to go to Selectmen and they're going to. So I think, I don't know, Kathy, I see you looking like you want to say something. So
That contact person is going to have the same difficulty that you guys have because they're the final say. And so, I mean, that's been some of the struggle of, you know, when Adam has come to me I mean, if it's regulatory, like a building code thing, we can answer those questions, or if it's a zoning question, we can answer those. These are subjective questions that are going to be up to the Board of Selectmen to decide. So it really needs to be a decision maker. And that, unfortunately, I think lies at least with one of the members of the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
yeah, the bottom line is, even if that individual is a member of the Board of Selectmen, the reality of it is it takes three.
Correct.
And that's the difficulty of doing business with a town or a government agency versus doing a business with a private company that you can walk in and sit down with a VP and get an answer.
Exactly.
Because the answer is, it depends, which is a terrible answer to give anybody who's trying to make a business decision. It depends. It depends on if I can get 2 or 3 of the 3 selectmen to agree. That's what everything we're talking about here always comes with it depends. It depends on what the Board of Selectmen are willing to do. We're making our recommendations, but ultimately they're going to do whatever they want to do because they can.
Then perhaps, Jim, our recommendation to the board is that we think for future uses of this site, that perhaps the board might want to choose one member of the Board of Selectmen to be, if you will, the property use liaison, to be the first point of contact with potential applicants who can at least lead them in the direction of the board's wishes. I mean, they have a licensing chairman, they have an appointments chair, each one of them has some special hat that they wear. Maybe there's a new category that they need to choose one of their members to be the town property use liaison or something like that.
Well, wouldn't
Which I
this be a
think-
licensing issue as well?
Well, yeah, but so maybe it's the licensing chair,
Yeah, exactly.
but they have a liquor licensing chair now. Whether it falls into that category or should be a separate person, I don't know, but maybe, again, what can we do? I think we can recommend to the board that we foresee a logistical issue of not having a single point of contact person, and recommend that they perhaps choose some method to delegate that initial responsibility to a person, either a member of the board or the town administrator or the town planner or something that would be, they have some authority, not to make the decision, but to be the liaison to bring applications to the Board of Selectmen.
And we, the committee, would have that same advantage of going to that person.
Right.
And I think that's what Susan, that's what you're implying, is that what we should be doing?
I think so, yes. And I also think it will help with the neighbors. If there's an identified.
Oh,
person.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Good
so
point.
So
Yeah.
I think everyone benefits from having as David said, a liaison or a significant point of contact, whatever you want to call it. because there's a lot of moving parts here. And the more we can consolidate it into one, one person, I think the better the outcome will be.
Kathy, Karen, you guys got all that?
No,
Yeah,
You write a little
I-
faster?
I guess I think that to a certain extent, Adam has had that, but it comes down to, we've had, when we got the original proposals, staff got together and wrote down all of our concerns. We met with you guys and with the two different proposals and kind of gave you some summaries and comparisons in order to make a recommendation. And then we all went to the Board of Selectmen, and then they ultimately made the recommendation. So I'm not sure what you're asking for. I know that when you say you're looking for a liaison and a contact person, they're going to pick somebody, a town staff person, to do that. And we do a lot of it, but when we bring it to a certain level, it gets to a certain level and we can't take it any further because we have no abilities to make any decisions. And that's frustrating for people coming to town. It's frustrating for staff. We can only make recommendations. I do think the Board of Selectmen are probably going to turn it around and ask for more input from you guys. I think they really do respect your opinion and they'd like to hear what your recommendations are for these things.
Yeah, and you're right. It gets to that point where it has to become them. And I will say that, my personal experiences of watching what's gone on with town staff through this process has been nothing but positive. Bruce has been out there time and again working on the COVID and the health issues. The building department was out looking at the structures and everything, and Karen and Kathy and even conservation. So, town staff is really, whenever something's come up, been given the opportunity to weigh in on it. But in the end, when we get to that negotiations of the final contracts, who's that person going to be, or how's that going to play out? And I think that's what we're all getting at, because I think the cooperation has been within the townspeople of getting answers to him. But even though it is still that it depends on what Tuesday night is.
Yep.
Karen, did you raise your hand?
I did. And I think that Kathy's description of the process so far is great. I think that going forward, what I'm hearing you guys say is you want to continue to, encourage the town to have a point of entry for discussing things license. We can talk amongst ourselves about who that might be. I know that Pat Armstrong has, indicated interest and ability to help somewhat. It may be that we can leverage some of her assistance. I think it's a good point. I think, though, that ultimately you're all right. The decision-making power is with the Board of Selectmen. And so, we try to queue things up best we can. But it's ultimately their call on all of these things.
It's really not that different from any other board that has to make a committee decision.
Yeah.
It's going to go to the
Great.
planning board or conservation or board of appeals. Staff can give all the guidance and wisdom that they have, but ultimately it's that committee that makes the decision. So
Yep.
maybe we're not as far off from I'm sure they're getting great advice and guidance from Karen and Kathy already. And that's getting them a long ways closer to approvals from the Board of Selectmen, because they've got a good sense of what the town thinks and what this committee thinks.
Cool.
Okay, good. So we are talking about a selectmen's meeting in November 19th.
I'm sorry, Jim, can I just go back one step? We have votes
No.
on a sound study, a comprehensive parking study, and on alcohol. I know that we had talked, David had talked about a recommendation to get more specifics on the movies, concerts, and that type of thing. And maybe discussing in that aspect frequency and get a vote on that so that we can talk about all of these different items that you're talking about. And then you also talked about exclusivity, but there was no specific vote on that. So I don't know whether you wanted to vote on that, but I think the frequency, you talked about it, but we never got to a resolution other than a good recommendation.
I would like to encourage the selectmen on this particular application, because he's proposing a long-term use as opposed to a single event, that we recommend that they incorporate the opportunity for other people to use the property as much as possible within the parameters of what he's proposing and needs to do. And just leave it at that for the moment. But encourage them that we're sensitive to that issue, that we'd like to leave that door ajar so that if somebody else comes along and wants to make use of the property, that if logistically we can make both work at the same time, that they do so.
As far
Would
as,
it be? Go ahead.
as far as the frequency, his list of events, he says Monday night is family movie night. Wednesday night, he doesn't say what Tuesday night is, but Wednesday night is symphony film with orchestrated music performances. Sounds to me like that's a concert and a movie together, and then concerts, and then plays and musicals. But he doesn't spell out the
He says-
mixture of how often those will be and when they'll be. And I
He
think
mentions otherwise up to 4 per
Right.
week.
An average of 4 per week, excluding movies. That's pretty heavy. And I don't know when that would start. And I apologize, I did not see that in the proposal. It did sound as though he also wanted to go through October. So getting back to the sound issues we were talking about, there's only so much we're going to be able to do for 2021. We can certainly move forward with the sound study. I think the line array will help. The reorientation will help. But I do think the frequency, I don't know whether you guys want to make a recommendation on that or whether you just want to ask for more details. It's up to you guys, but I think that's an
What would
important
what would that mean for Mr. Epstein? Would he have to truck all of his equipment out of the site? Or could he put it, or just move it one side for another use? How would that work?
Kathy, could you bring up that plan that showed the drive-in site with his orientation again?
Yeah, just a moment. These are the little coves. These are where people would be sitting with 4 to 6 people in each one, and there's 440 shown.
Right. I see the one issue that we have. If he has a heavy schedule like that, I do not think it's practical that anybody else can use the site, Kathy, realistically.
Well, that's kind of my point.
Unless we're going to give him grass and we go down there and you do like line striping for a field and he marks each one out. But with the condition of the site now, with this, gravel and dirt and other materials, he has to stake it off and put string lines around it. So it's not really, there's a lot of setup and takedown to make this work.
Right.
And I don't know if he's going to have little speakers in each one of these pods too. So, that's a lot of setup on his
so.
part.
Let me ask a quick, and again, we don't have him here, but if I'm looking at
Adam is raising his hand.
Okay,
I think
well-
he can answer some of these questions, and I'm sorry, I cannot.
Okay, so one of my questions is, and I'm using my mouse on my computer like you guys can see it, and you can't. If you look at the top where it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4 buses, and right below that, there's a green line. Is that a fence? So would he because it comes across over to the other side as well. Could he, I could envision they could fence that off with, fencing and still be able to use, because the key area is that stage and his equipment.
Hey,
Not
Jim,
the rest of the site to the right.
Jim, the area with the line, I think is the dumping ground for Parker River Bridge. So I think that's a no-go zone for right now.
The actual license area is all of this. And he is actually showing some work within the license area that MIG, the contractor for Parker's River Bridge, has. They are working like the devil soon, starting up soon, and I don't know how much, whether they could narrow down their area that they need to something smaller to give Adam more opportunity when it comes to the summer. Again, I'm not specifically sure, if is it from, obviously it'd be after Memorial Day because they need to get access to this, but June, July, August, September, October. I'm not clear on the actual months that he's asking for. And then the frequency was the average of 4. So is that through that entire time? So getting a handle on that would be helpful if we could hear from Adam on what he's proposing.
But I think Rich's point was that by this setup, he'd almost have to be making an exclusive use. But I think that there's a way to certainly cordon off that stuff and still use the far right-hand side of the facility if they were doing something, less, but just kind of what I'm thinking. I'm looking at it going, okay, why can't you just fence that off for another event?
Right. The only issue is, Jim, is right now the Parker River Bridge contractor has that area that's crosshatched. And then as Kathy said, by all rights, if he wants to, he has the use of that area with the blue dotted line around it. Not that he's using it right now, but he does have the right.
Correct. That's the construction company. I'm talking about the stuff down directly. There you go, Kathy. That whole area there. Why can't he? So he could still fence off his stage and everything with hurricane fencing or whatever they use, and we could still utilize the rest of this facility for another event.
Yeah, the thing is though, Jim, each of those pod, I mean, is see how you see how the little posts with the stakes. Now, when we're in a non-COVID world, that could go away, but that's not the reality probably for next year. So he's got to dig all that out of the ground or pull it out, or it's, I mean, it can be done,
Right.
sure, but it's not going to be an easy task to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wouldn't make sense to him to do it as well.
Can you
Correct.
go back one screen, Kathy, for a minute? I guess I misunderstood his proposal here. Is he suggesting that all of this customer area, both the kind of bluish green and the darker blue, those are not going to be cars, they're just going to be people?
Yeah.
Yes,
I thought the
next screen.
pedestrian area, if you will, the people sitting was
Yeah,
only
like
the
that.
area up front,
Like
the
this,
darker
Dave.
blue area, and not the entire site. He's proposing no cars?
No. Well, if
Oh,
we go back to his comments, he said some will be on site, some will be off site.
In conversations I had with Adam, I think he's hoping that there might be some possibility of, depending on where MIG is in their construction, of maybe using some of this area as well.
Or
For parking, I'm sorry, for parking.
so none of the blue and kind of purpley areas we're seeing, those aren't cars, those are just people, right?
There's a
Correct.
cove, what he calls coves,
Okay,
which is that next picture that Kathy had, and
Yeah.
there's 440
40.
of them,
Yeah.
which would hold up to 6 people per cove.
Right. And I think what's driving that, Jim, is the whole COVID. It's all about getting the separation.
Right,
Right.
I mean, if this was a normal world, it would just be a green and you just bring your, your blanket and everything and, you just pack them in. But that's not our reality right now.
Okay, where were we? Kathy, get me back on track here.
I was wondering if you wanted to have some type of vote on, the more specifics with regard to the movies and the number of movies, the number of concerts, the number of these different types of events, and then maybe if you had any recommendation with the maximum or the time frame. I mean, what would an average of 2 be perfectly fine? I don't know whether that would be workable for Adam or not, but it might be something that's a concession and a balance with the neighbors and the noise. Is the line arrays can be done in a certain way to keep the noise down, but you're still going to have some noise. It's like the DY band.
Right.
I hear that at my house, but it's not so bad because it's not every single night.
That's because of COVID. It used to be every night.
Right. True. No, not that bad.
But, and that's a good point with regards to sound. I mean, I used to live up by, behind the Dunkin' Donuts. And that's how far up I lived. And I could hear the DY band up at, so, I mean, I get the sound issue. But as far as my personal thing is, a balanced mix, but then you get to the subjectivity of what's balanced. What I think is balanced and what David thinks is balanced, it might be 2 different things. To me, balance would be 80% jazz and 5% rock and another 10% of family movies, but a little bit of country music mixed in. But that's my balance, and I think that's part of the issue of noise. There's good noise and there's bad noise. There's good noise if you're listening to Etta James singing At Last, which is a great song. And there's not so good music if you listen to somebody else.
Well,
No politics. So, and that's really, I mean, part of what the neighborhood is saying is, listen, we don't want to listen to this kind of music all the time. So finding that balance between what is, quote, family entertainment I mean, even the concerts, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, all the concerts that were, there this summer, there were kids in all of those. So what's family entertainment? Anything without using the F-bomb, I guess? I don't know. But I think that's kind of really got to be something that maybe he says, I'm going to do X amount of concerts and I agreed to do X amount of movies and X amount of this and X amount of that. Maybe that's what he does with the selectmen, is to agree to the numbers of each of those, and how that mix gets put together is
Well,
kind of,
I think
it's
the
kind of a
select,
business decision.
I think the selectmen are going to bring out a lot of those questions as well.
Yeah.
Maybe that for our purposes, again, trying to keep in context what we're doing, that our recommendation to the selectmen should be that throughout the entire summer season, every week, there be a mix of activities, including movies and comedy and different forms of musical concert, but that every single week be mixed so that there's a variety of choices throughout the summer season.
Well, then the other question becomes, do you want this every single weekend? And again, thinking about the neighbors to the west, if that's my second home over there in Iroquois Boulevard, and I'm coming down there just to kick back and relax on the weekends, and every single weekend, you've got a rock and roll band. Well, I don't really care that you did a family movie on Monday because I'm not there. So again, that's how you get that balance that do we want to let them do it every weekend? I don't know. I think that's kind of, again, that's a business decision that, Mr. Epstein needs to look at and said, can I afford to, do every other weekend or, on all days ending in Y or whatever.
I think what you might find, Jim, is when I'm in talking with Adam, is that it's not necessarily the weekends. You may have a top band playing in Boston on the weekends and willing to come down to Yarmouth on a Monday or come to a Thursday and then go up to Boston. So it may not really, the weekends may not always be the only times he's interested in having someone.
But by that scenario, we're asking him to give us some flexibility, because therefore that Monday night movie, he may say, hey, sorry, can't do Monday night movie this week because Rolling Stones are in town.
Yeah,
Right.
I wouldn't want to lock him into just one day for a movie a week. I mean, mix it up. And I was thinking in terms of the assortment, Jim, obviously in terms of the impact on the immediate neighborhood, but also in terms of whether this accomplishes our original objective for the site. And that is that it provide a variety of resources for the community and benefits for people who are already here vacationing. I think we want them to mix it up with something different, every night or throughout the week. So the people who are here on vacation will have choices, reasons to stay in town, reasons to come to town.
Exactly, which is what we're all trying to accomplish here to begin with. So does that answer your question as far as frequency, Kathy, or are you still not sure what we said?
I think the Board of Selectmen are going to want your recommendations. That's just been the way we've been get together with the DISEC and get their recommendations. I'm not so concerned about what type of events are happening. I think it's the frequency. I mean, do you really want 4 or 5 events a week throughout the entire summer? And is that okay?
Hey, Kathy and everybody, I think we're missing the whole point. I think the
Yeah.
frequency is irrelevant and the acts are irrelevant. From the neighborhood standpoint, it's ultimately what we get back to is what's it going to be like noise level? I don't know.
Exactly. That's
I
the
mean,
key issue.
Yeah, so the thing is yeah, I like jazz, I like rock, I like different musics, but the thing is I wouldn't care what it was if it was, all the time and it was just a noise issue.
Sure.
So it may not be as much of an issue with a new stage and this linear, but we don't know. The problem is we're selling something that we don't know what we're selling. And we can't give anybody a straight answer on that. Is what is the impact going to be? I mean, it's awful. If it's awful hard saying that you can go do this or you can have this mix, and we really don't know what the impact is. He might be able to have a rock concert every night, and it's not an issue with this. I don't think we should limit it to him. But the problem is we don't we don't know, we don't know, what, we don't know.
We
what the
don't know what we don't know.
Right. We don't know what we don't know. Exactly.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Unknown
think-
unknowns.
I do think that the whole combination of all of these things, the types of activity, the frequency, and whatnot, that they do kind of in aggregate impact the noise.
Right. But the thing, Karen, is if you have a rock concert or you have a jazz concert or something, I mean, technically they can all have the same. I mean, we get the Boston Pops down there. I mean, it all has the same sound level. Whether you like one type of music over other is really irrelevant. It's
Right.
it's the noise. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's not addressable, but the problem is how do you tell the neighborhood that I mean, we're going to try to address it, and I think we're making a good faith effort. I mean, I don't disagree there, but we can't give them any quantitative answers. We don't know the answer.
And I think what you're trying to say here is that they could do it every single night with the Rolling Stones there. If they can't hear it, then they don't care.
Exactly.
They're gonna
But-
hear it.
I don't mean,
Sorry, it's next door. They're gonna hear it.
no, my point being that if they don't hear it, or if the sound is mitigated, then the frequency is not as relevant as if there was no noise mitigation.
Right. I mean, we're trying to put restrictions on something that we don't know. Do we need to restrict it, or what can we do to accommodate it?
Yeah.
I mean, I wish I had the opportunity to sit in and listen to what one of these linear what it sounds like. How well does it focus it? You know what I mean? That would be great. I mean, I wish we had that opportunity, and then we could actually make an educated, recommendation. I mean,
I don't even think that would help, Rich, because what you might like is linear sound might be different than somebody else. The bottom line is the perception is that there's noise, and that we are recommending to the Board of Selectmen that they do what they can to mitigate the noise issues with the applicant.
Right. But what I'm saying though, Jim, is not noise. I don't mean the type of noise or the sound, but you could walk around and see, okay, it substantially fades off when you go outside that cone, that acoustic cone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't have any experience with it. I can't obviously tell you that. I mean,
and to be honest with you, I don't think that even if we did, and this isn't a knock on the neighborhood, and I don't mean it to be at all, but just because we hear it and think it's comfortable, until they hear it, they're gonna take it as just general information. It's what I would if I'm sitting in that seat and like, oh, we got this guy that says it's expert. Really?
Right.
Turn it on and then let me tell you. So
The difference is we can leave, they can't.
exactly. And that's why we need to be concerned about the whole issue of sound, and sound and frequency kind of go together, not, no pun intended, but the frequency of events, not the frequency of sound. And again, like I say, if the sound is mitigated, then the number of events is not really as relevant because of sound. It becomes more of a frequency of events based upon the usage of the site.
Right.
That would be the ultimate goal.
Right.
Because let's say he says, all right, I'm going to have events. I'm willing to do events 3 days a week. Well, on the other 4 days a week, we've got a carnival, we've got another festival or something else. Well, now our frequency issue is addressed, but he's addressed it by saying he's not going to do it, but others are going to use it. Now we're still using it 10 days, 7 days a week.
It's about amplification. It's about events that result in amplification.
Yeah.
It all comes down to the amps.
Yeah. So I don't know how we recommend a number of days allowed. I don't know.
My understanding is that the neighbors are to some degree getting organized, and they intend to weigh in on this issue before the selectmen as well. So they may well have some suggestions on this point for the selectmen.
Okay.
Jim, I'm just
Anybody
going to
else?
let you know that both Adam Epstein and Mary Vilbon have their hands raised. I'm just informing you.
Okay. Let's go ahead. Let's let Adam weigh in on some of the things. He's had to sit and listen to us prognosticate. Adam, are you there?
I got to allow him to talk. There
Hey.
you go.
Adam, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Sure. You've had the opportunity to sit and listen to us kind of discuss a bunch of this. Do you have some things that you want to make comment on?
Sure. First, I do want to address the issue of exclusive use. We, under no circumstances have we ever asked for, requested,
Can you
intimated.
speak up a little bit more?
Okay. Hold on. Let me see if I can.
I can't hear you very well.
Can you hear me or you can't hear me?
You're
Kind
soft.
of hard.
Up the volume.
If I can raise the.
Uh-oh. He pulled a Jim.
So what he expressed that he does not have a desire for exclusivity. Was the beginning of his comment. Well, here he is. He's back.
Somebody muted me. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So at no time have I ever intimated, expressed, suggested, written, spoken about exclusivity. The site, all we have done is we produced or created a venue for the town of Yarmouth that hosted live events and movies. And we availed that venue to anybody who requested it. They all requested access to certain components of the site. Some of them just requested use of the screens. Some of them requested use of the audio equipment and the screens. Some of them requested use of the stage, the audio, and the equipment. Some of them requested use of none of it, but just wanted to meet and use the porta potties and have people gather and stand on the stage and be able to use standard, just being able to speak to the crowd using a megaphone. All of them carried a different price point just because there was a different cost to rent the equipment from the vendors that we contracted. So, it's like with Cape Cod 5, they wanted and we were happy to have them out there. They did a family movie night and they showed a movie, and they asked for remote cameras to be able to have their CEO speak from the stage and appear on the video screens. The cameras that were used are manned by real people who earn a real amount of money. And so Cape Cod 5 was more than happy to pay for their time and the rental of that equipment from Gateway Productions. So the site has always been fully available to use by anybody who requested. Just like some of them, like with the Cape Cod College, they asked me for a quote to rent the full site, the entire thing, which includes, of course, the security, the parking staff, the access management, the COVID hygienic preparedness, the cleaning afterward, which is about $3,000, and the use of all the FM transmission and the video gear. All of that is all subcontracted on a use-by-use basis from Gateway Productions. The porta potties, we hired United Site Services to come and service every porta potty after every event and do the appropriate electrostatic spraying to ensure that COVID was not transmitted anywhere from our site. So, and these are the things that we would pay for when we did the show on our own shows. But at any point, anybody who inquired about accessing the site had full availability to it. So, and we never restricted anybody. In fact, frankly, if they were to have paid for some of that equipment, it would have helped me defer my expenses. So we invited people. We encouraged. I mean, I think if you talk to Cape Cod 5, they tell you that they got a real deal on the use of the site. So we did make it available on a continuous basis. What we also did offer was a regulated system that ensured the safety of people that used it. So that, and with a standardized system of porta potties and parking management and access control in terms of having ushers and security on site who knew the site. So if you don't have that, then you have 6 organizations all having to rent their own gear and do the delivery and do the setup and then do the breakdown, then the cleaning and maintenance and then breakdown. So what we afforded was a very manageable system that afforded a lot of different organizations the benefit of having the fact that I paid for all that equipment and they didn't have to pay for a week's worth of rentals in order to use it all. So we created a system that afforded a lot of opportunity for other people to utilize it with no restrictions whatsoever. And that would be exactly what we were trying to create for the future. As far as the coves go, yes, I mean, the coves are there. They're more semi-permanent structures designed to allow people to gather in a socially distant way. I don't want them. I want an open field where people can gather universally and do whatever they want. But in order to have a public gathering space in this current environment, we've all seen, for example, town meetings under tents where there are chairs placed all over, all over under a tent 6 feet apart. That's no different than what we have here, except it's more of a permanent structure, but it allows people to gather as a community in fixed socially distanced coves. And that I thought would be an asset. If it's not something that the town would see as an asset, then we're obviously going barking up the wrong tree. So, but what you got and what you would continue to get from us is a uniform system that would afford itself to users of all types. But you get the benefit of an organized event producer like us, who's created a system for you all to use. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that, as far as the movies go, I just want to put it on the record. We showed 26 movies. Okay. We sold 2,520 vehicle passes for movies. Of the movie revenue generated, 50% of it goes back to the movie studios. That's just the way the movie business works. That's why a bag of popcorn is so expensive. Because the only way the exhibitors, the movie theaters, make money is by selling concessions. That is unlike any other business. You just don't earn the income. So that's the reason the movie business is hard. Plus, when you make the money from the movie business, you're talking about selling 100 cars for a typical movie, which is about 400 people, but that's about $4,000, which means that we netted $2,000. It cost me $2,500 to clean the porta potties after every movie. So if I can't even cover the cleaning cost of having the people on the site when I have a movie, I can't possibly afford to build the site to the first class specifications that we did. So this is I'm sorry to jump into that one part, but this was not a cash grab in any way by going to live entertainment. From the very beginning, our pitch to the town of Yarmouth was about creating an entertainment center in Yarmouth, not a movie theater. We tried to create an attraction to Yarmouth that created a unique entertainment opportunity that had movies, comedy, sporting, broadcasts of sports events, and live entertainment, so that it created a unique opportunity because there were already drive-in movie theaters across Massachusetts at the time. So we all recognized that the only way for people to be interested to come to Yarmouth was to give them something special. So we specifically avoided doing the same thing that Wellfleet was doing, and Mendon, and Barnes and Hyannis in the parking lot, and New Bedford. We specifically steered away from doing the same thing that everybody else was doing, so we could draw all those people to Yarmouth that supported the businesses and supported the local economy. So and in fact, we ended up building the largest live music venue in the Northeast. And so what you had was people coming from Boston, from Rhode Island, from Connecticut, from Maine, from New Hampshire, all coming here because it was the only place, to your town, because it was the only place to see live entertainment. And they didn't do that for movies because they could see movies around the corner, but they came to Yarmouth to see live entertainment. And so to that end, we satisfied the very vision that we proposed to the Board of Selectmen with my opening statement on June 16th. Where it was very, very clear that my pitch was about creating an entertainment venue that filled a diverse range of entertainment options. But it did become clear early on that movies were just too expensive with the costs associated with running a COVID safe environment, a COVID safety compliant venue. So if it weren't for all of those extra measures that we took for cleaning and security and safety, then perhaps it could have been an affordable venture to show movies. It just isn't in this environment. So if we had to the end of this, the goal of the proposal was to create a diversified set of revenue streams that will allow us to show a diverse range of programming, some of which won't be lucrative. But if I had all the revenue streams that traditional venues have, like if you go to the Boston Garden, for example, you see, they sell beer, they sell food, they sell parking, they sell all of those things. And as a result, you see things at the Boston Garden, some of which make money and some of which don't. So if we build a venue here that has a great range of revenue streams, that you will get a venue with great technology that can satisfy some of the technical concerns you have about noise. If you restrict access to the things that allow us to derive revenue, then there will be nobody willing and interested in building out those systems that will help deliver a venue that will make people in Yarmouth proud and that will bring people to town. So all I'm saying is we really have to build a system that attracts people to town. And you hope by building the proper venue with the best technology and a respectable system to coexist within the community in a respectful way, then you win. You get what you want. I'm sorry, I think I interrupted somebody.
I just wanted to bring in the point, Adam, that based on the surveys that I'm assuming this was done by the chamber, the Yarmouth Drive-In survey results. Was that done by the chamber?
Yes.
Okay. So by their numbers, 60% of the respondents to this questionnaire, 60% came from Massachusetts, or from out of state. So the things that we're doing with regards to this, did we lose me again?
No.
Oh, okay. Of drawing people to our community, it clearly has worked. And that's been demonstrated by the numbers that show that, like, let's say 44.59 from other Massachusetts and 15.98. I don't know how you get a 0.98 of a human or 0.59 of a human, but those numbers suggest to me that well over 60% of the people who've attended, there you go, thank you, events at the site come from outside of the area. And I think if we were to look at that, to Adam's point, if we were to break this down by event, we might find that some of those movies that were played, for example, were probably well attended by people from the Dennis Yarmouth area, but probably didn't bring anybody in from Truro or from even over the bridge to watch a movie that they can see on Netflix. So I think we need to have that balance that provides that ability to do what we want to do, and that's attract people to our community, but in a way that is not only beneficial economically to the community, but to the well-being of the people in the community as a whole. And by listening to their concerns, we're trying to address those. And I think that's a good thing. I had said at one of our meetings that this has been a learning experience and we're learning a lot. And one of the things I've learned is that this works. This brings people to our community who eat in our restaurants and stay in our hotels and support our business community. And that was one of our key goals. But it was also one of our key goals is to provide a venue that the community can use and be proud of. And I think, we're working on that. And so, I think that we hear what you're saying, Adam, and that you got to kind of work together. And I think that's what the message we're trying to get to the selectmen is, that let's work together and trying to address some of these issues to move forward.
Thank you, Jim. Sorry, was somebody?
Can I ask Adam a question?
Go ahead, David.
This new configuration of the site that you've proposed and the new sound system that you're proposing, what level of confidence do you have that that's going to solve the neighborhood noise concerns?
I mean, I would put it, I'd put it in front of the best sound engineers and ask their opinion. But I've used a very similar system. By the way, I don't know if you can see me or if you're just hearing me, but I'm leaning into.
Just hearing.
Okay, good, because I'm leaning into the screen and I don't know whether you're seeing like the top of my forehead or you just anyway. So I didn't want to scare anybody. That's all. But this is the same sound technology that we deployed in the middle of Vineyard Haven, Massachusetts, to produce our Beach Road Weekend Music Festival, which Veterans Memorial Park, if you look it up on Google Maps, is right at Five Corners in Vineyard Haven, which is one of the most trafficked positions on the island. And it's right in the middle of a residential area. It has 3 sides with homes around it. And we received universal praise and acknowledgement that our efforts to utilize the proper sound technology resulted in an experience that did not disrupt our neighbors. And I mean, admittedly, it's going to cost me, for an entire summer, it would cost some north of $100,000 to rent. But it's worth it if you get a great audio experience for your fans, because that's what they're looking for. The fans are looking for great audio too. I mean, it's not just trying to mitigate neighbors, it's trying to deliver great sound to people that pay to see it and hear it. So, we don't want it to go out into the neighborhood. We want it to go to the fans that are paying for the tickets. And that's what they'll get. And the neighbors, I'm confident with a partnership effort where we use the sound barriers that we put in the proposal, and we used proper delay wall and line array sound systems, that we're going to end up with a system that keeps the sound largely within the park. And of course, we're directing it the opposite direction this time. We didn't have a directional sound system this year. We didn't.
What music was that?
That wasn't me. We didn't have a directional sound system this year because of the FM transmission system. So there was no way to control where the audio went, which was one of the issues. It was a deregulated, unmanaged system completely. We couldn't turn it louder or make it softer. We had no control over it once somebody brought a boombox in their trunk in their trunk of their car, and they started blasting it. And if they were at the perimeter near Niagara, those people heard the boombox, not the stage. Now, I just want to illustrate with one point. We had a band called Goose on September 11 and 12, or 10 and 11. It was a great show. Two sellouts. Bruce Murphy and one of my staff, Joe Cosin, drove around to the Riverview Resort Hotel across the street just to hear how the sound was. We were constantly doing audio measurements. We have a professional level decibel reader that we were using at all times to ensure that we were underneath a 60 decibel reading, no matter where we traveled outside the park. And if we were over 60, we would immediately relay it to our production manager, who would ensure that we would try to lower the FM transmission signal so that the overall volume, the gross volume, would be lower. But anyway, so when they got over to the Riverview, what they heard was that the sound was coming from the middle of the field. And Bruce will back this up. They didn't hear the sound coming from the stage. They heard the sound coming from the middle of the park, which just goes to show that the sound was deregulated and coming exclusively from people in and around their own vehicles. It wasn't coming from the stage. And that's just the function of the fact that we used a deregulated audio system where we couldn't control it from a singular point in a way that was appreciably beneficial to anybody in the neighborhood. And by having a singular system that's regulated by a sound engineer on a nightly basis, using proper technology, you get what you expect. And that's the thing we couldn't necessarily get with this past summer, because we didn't have that singular control.
Okay, well, thank you for that input, Adam. I'm just looking at the clock, and I have an event I've got to get to. Did I just lose the entire group here again?
No, we're here. We're here.
No, I don't see you all, but
We can hear you, Jim.
Okay, good. You don't have to see me, as long as you hear me. So I want to just try to wrap this thing up. We have November 19th to get a recommendation back to the board. So Kathy, what I'd like to be able to do is if you could kind of take this whole 2.5 hours and put it into an understandable presentation for Tom, David, and I, to particularly David, because he's our wordsmith, to review. And then we can get it back to the board, to the committee as a whole, to make a comment so we can get this to them as far as our recommendations are concerned. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. We've really kind of gone around the mulberry bush with regards to all the issues. I think we all agree that we want to continue to do some stuff here. But most importantly, we want the drive-in site to be a good neighbor. And that, from what I'm getting, is that we're doing what we can to mitigate the concerns of the community. And we'll continue to do that. But, like I said, we don't know what we don't know. With that said, is there anything else we need to discuss before I end this meeting?
I think Karen has
I'm
something.
gonna make you, can I make you all suffer for 1 minute? Because
right,
Kathy,
go.
if you look at your notes, you've taken a couple of votes,
Mhm.
but you started a couple conversations but didn't finish them. The first was that you're going to recommend to the selectmen to consider Mr. Epstein's proposal. You understand there's serious concerns about noise, give consideration and thought to encourage the application, and then we need to evaluate the sound. Susan had made a motion around the comprehensive parking plan.
Mhm.
You have had a vote on recommending around recommending the special alcohol license. You had some discussion on point person, but no vote. Some discussion on incorporating the opportunity to make available the site as much as possible, but no vote.
Okay, hold on a minute. Karen, let me help you out here a minute. With regards to the point person, we didn't take a vote. It's our suggestion that a recommendation
Yep.
be made to the board. But there
Okay,
wasn't a
that's
vote.
okay. That's good. And then, so and you're recommending that the site be made available as much as possible.
Mhm.
And recommend, do you want to go ahead and recommend a variety of events?
Well, I'm going to speak for the committee and let them correct me when I'm wrong, and I'm sure they will. It is our recommendation to have a balanced mix of events at the site. And that, I think, to my line of thinking, has to be something that is a business decision that they have to work out between them. And we can't I don't want to dictate and says, hey, Adam, I want you to have 6 Lady Gaga concerts.
No, and I think that
5 will be plenty.
I think that Mr. Epstein made some good points too around the concern, and you need to balance the whole economic model with a successful business operation here.
Exactly.
Kathy, did I miss anything?
One more, I think,
Please.
if we didn't make it clear, I think we should recommend as strongly as possible that they take whatever revenue they've gotten this year,
Oh, yeah.
segregate it from the general fund and turn it back into the site as much as possible. And it
Thank you.
seems from our discussion that maybe the most productive use of the money this year would be the cleaning up and grassing rather than infrastructure per se. Again, that's not for us to say, but it seems like that was a priority that helped everybody.
Yep.
Cleaning the site and grassing.
over the electricity, because I think that might be something that's temporary versus I
Right.
think the grassing would be something that would be
Right.
a permanent benefit.
I think it
Well,
might be a more productive first use of the money.
I would agree.
Can I just
Thank
be
you,
clear
David.
on what Jim said? It sounds like there was a lot of great recommendations. I think Karen and I can put it together in a draft memo for the Board of Select. Then we're going to have another dissect meeting before the Board of Select meeting so that everyone can confirm, or is this?
Just circulate it.
just,
Yeah.
well, we can't deliberate. So either you guys can vote to let David and Jim be the ultimate deciders or you can have a quick meeting and go over the draft.
So in the interest of, well, actually, I got two interests here. In the interest of transparency, I would rather have a meeting where we can deliberate and there's some transparency involved.
I would prefer
In the
that.
interest of time, however, I think that if we could just get it done, we can get it done. But I'm a big, keep this as much in the open as we can so everybody sees exactly what we're thinking and how we're presenting our argument to the board.
I don't think it would be a long meeting. I think you guys have done a lot of the hard work now. It would just kind of be more of a confirmatory meeting before going to the Board of Selectmen. I do want to just to mention to you, Jim, because I'm not sure you can see that Raymond, Dewey, and Bob, no last name, have their hands raised.
And and to the two of them, I would ask that if you do have comments, you can submit them to us. I'm trying to wrap this meeting up. It's been going on 2.5 hours. So I appreciate that you have a desire to make a comment. Karen, I think both of them know how to communicate with us. So if we could ask them to send us an email with regards to the concerns, I'd be glad to consider them. But I do want to try to wrap this meeting up for this evening. So is the committee in agreement that we have one brief meeting to review the minutes and our proposal to the Board of Selectmen, or would you prefer us to have David and I and Tom review it? Members?
Jack McCormick speaking. Either way, it doesn't make any difference to me. A short meeting, it's okay, or I trust you and David to do a good job.
Well, that was a lot of help.
Can I actually throw out a date? Why don't we just talk about a date? Thursday, the 12th.
Yep.
Yep.
Kathy, how does that look for you?
Just hang on one sec.
What time?
I'm good.
We could does the 4 o'clock time slot work for folks? Tom, you're on mute, so we can't hear you.
12th works for me.
12th is okay with me.
Yep.
Okay.
So why don't we plan to have a 10 or 15 minute meeting on the 12th, 4 o'clock-ish. Kathy will get the memo to everybody for us to review in advance. We'll take some comment and discussion and make any final edits and get it back to the board.
Sounds good.
Everybody good with that?
Sounds
Yes.
good.
We adjourn.
Kathy?
Move to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
Oh, yes.
I have a
Put it on
motion
the
to approve
agenda.
the minutes to the previous meeting. Do I have a
Second,
second?
second.
Okay, I have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
No,
Roll call.
Roll call.
Roll call.
David,
David, yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Rich,
Abstain, I wasn't at the last meeting.
Jack,
Yes.
I'm a yes. Susan?
She wasn't at the last meeting, right?
She'll probably abstain as well. Okay. Any opposed? Okay. That motion passes. That was the third meeting. Okay, what else am I missing? I think that's about it.
Hey, Jim,
Kathy? Yes, Rich.
can I just suggest one other thing, what Dave was saying about the grass? We should maybe investigate too, we have all that riprap dumped all around the site. That we should look at disposing of that and taking the income that would take from we receive from selling that material to help improve the grass area.
I thought that stuff was gonna be used as a reef.
A significant
That's what I
amount of it
thought.
has been removed from the site and has been used as a reef.
Oh, it has? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. If you're talking about like the western corner there behind, like near where the MIG area was,
Some
there's
there,
some dispersed throughout the site.
around the
closer
whole-
to-
yeah, it was all dumped there from when they built the golf course. So it's been there a long time.
There's still some of that.
Yeah.
Have the bridge company take it away.
That'd be great because it'd open up more area and it's a safety issue too. It's a liability having it out there for having it as entertainment venue.
And I know we want to get this meeting over with, but I think with this discussion of all that, I think it's important that we start looking at what would it cost us to scrape that lot and put some grass down. I think we all think that that's probably not a bad idea to consider, but we need a cost to determine that if we should do it.
If you do that, you have to consider irrigation.
Either temporary or permanent, one or the other. You know, you can do like farmers do with those big things that walk across the lawn. But I think for us to consider whether we should make that improvement, we need to know what is it going to cost us.
True.
And we're hoping the selectmen will pay for it out of the proceeds, right?
It's gonna cost more than that.
It's gonna be more.
Will we adjourn?
Okay, Kathy and Karen, are you all set?
Yes, I think we got
Yeah.
our marching orders.
Okay, so Jack has a motion to adjourn on the
Second.
table. I think I heard a second. I don't know why I'm going to
Rich
ask this, but is there any discussion? Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your time tonight. I know this is a lot for us to digest and to get done, but I hope everybody understands that we're trying to do what's best for the community as a whole. And this is the Dissect Listening Tour, and we've been listening and trying to make some recommendations that are beneficial to the community as a whole.
Vote to
Thank you very
adjourn.
much for your time. And motion has been accepted. Meeting adjourned.
Aye.